and welcome to the RSU 14 Board of Directors Workshop. It is Monday. It is Saturday, March 29th, 2014, approximately 8:03 a.m. And we're here this morning to hear cost center presentations. And first up is Dr. Kyle Rhodes from Wyndham Primary School. So welcome.
Good morning, everyone. Before I get into the actual budget presentation, I just wanted to share a little bit about yesterday was a workshop day for the district, and overwhelming the feedback that I received was how positive people felt about what we did yesterday at the primary in regards to the workshop day.
What was the subject?
All of it was tied back to our school goals, which are collegiality and also using collegiality, working together to improve our literacy achievement. Some of it was time for teams to work through any challenges or problems that they have been facing, because that's what teams do. We also had some training with the Pro Track, which is the online supervision evaluation program, because that's fairly new to our district. So we were training with that, and just the activities were all connected back to the all related to that. And, it was nice to hear people. I wanted to share that with you because I know our community also needs to hear that what's happening on those days. When students aren't here, it was still a learning day, just weren't students present. So moving on to the actual presentation, as I just shared, we have two school goals this year. One is connected to, well, they're both connected to the proficiency-based learning environment that we're trying to create both as a district and as a school. The one is specifically around collegiality, and when teachers went to their undergraduate programs, there wasn't a course on how do you work together, how do you collaborate. So something that we certainly need to support teachers in doing. And the next one is around the need to improve in regards to our students who are beating on grade level. The research nationally is quite clear in regards to the fact that students being able to read well by the time they leave their grade is a very strong indicator of success in life. Being able to graduate high school and be ready for a career at college. So that's, and then actually I happened to come across an article this week that actually made the correlation as soon as first grade that now that the research is supporting. So it certainly is for our primary school, a primary initiative that will continue on. Moving on to the next section, one of the areas that has been a lot of the work has in regards to our school goals is just how we operate structurally in regards to the teaching teams that we've created. Every classroom teacher is part of a team, and then also how we structure our leadership, which I've presented before on a couple of occasions, how that operates. But it's all in a collaborative environment so that we are all functioning that way, no matter what our role is in the building. We're also looking at taking one of our teaching teams and having them move, what I would consider, move forward a little bit quicker than the rest of the school in regards to proficiency-based. As Sandy and others have shared, like for example, Christine Hessler have shared, where our school district is going with proficiency-based learning and how to create that learning environment, because it is a drastically different environment than what we all experienced as students. However, I feel we need to have some people who are willing to sort of like be action researchers and get out and get their classroom environments to look a little bit differently. So that's where our focus is going to be next year in regards to one area. Certainly the work that we've started will continue. For example, around the collaboration for the whole school and also reading itself. The hope is that these folks will allow each of us in our building to kind of look and see and learn from each other about how that's working well, and from them kind of moving ahead a little bit quicker, we'll also be able to find out where are the challenges. This is all very new work for all schools, not just in this district, but across the country. So we also have, because we are a focus school this year, we also have had to create a plan, and in the plan, it really kind of forced us to kind of look at moving forward at least part of the school with proficiency based in a quicker manner. And so there is some federal funding that's going along with this initiative. I'm gonna move on, and I know certainly welcome questions as I move through, but I'll move on to the actual increases and some decreases in the budget lines. The one increase that you'll see first around instructional supplies, if you look back at primary school, I know I don't think you have back to 2008, but there's been years where we've had significant decreases to instructional supplies. It's typically been so that because it continues to be economics continue to be a difficult economic times. It's been a trade-off of, okay, we'll take a pretty good decrease in instructional supplies, try to save a teaching position. This year, I felt strongly that the prior year, FY14, the year we're in right now, we had pretty significant, once again, decrease in supplies. I just felt like we can't do that again, and so that's the increase. It actually doesn't quite get us to the FY08 level, but pretty close. Also, another part of the way we're operating primary, the way we're doing the supply ordering, we are, and I feel very confident about it, we are much better about knowing what we have on hand. It's a large school, so I mean, we used to have 3 supply closets. We now have one major one, and then another one that's stores some supplies, but not as much as it used to. So by downsizing our supply closet, we have a lot. We kind of know in the moment how much we have on hand, and then we can make those adjustments a lot easier when we need more things. We're working. We're trying to work smarter about it all. So I feel confident we can operate and meet the curricular needs with this increase.
May I ask a question about?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Can we be interactive in the middle of it, or?
I think maybe if we can maybe let him just do the whole thing and then.
Okay.
No, because that's not how we did it before, but fine, go ahead.
I'm okay. Okay. The next item is an increase to a line in regards to the teacher-coach meetings. This is in reaction to a couple of things. One is, as a district, we're going to be rolling out the standards that are local standards that are aligned to the Common Core. They're often referred to as the measurement topics. I want to make sure that those are aligned well with the instruction that goes on in primary school, as well as the interventions we use for kids that are struggling with those standards. So we already have twice a month where the teacher coaches meet together and making sure that our teams are moving forward in the work in regards to how do we support all students, specifically our struggling students. So one reason for this increase is because I know those standards are coming, and we'll have them by the end of the year, and we need to prepare for next year in regards to that and throughout next year. The other piece is the coaches are giving me feedback that they need more time to meet as a grade level, as the leaders around this work, and so that will allow for that to happen. And the goal will be of this time is to ensure that we're using our instructional practice and our interventions to directly align with those new standards. So those are the 2 major increases to lines. The next part of the presentations in regards to decreases, and some of these decreases are in regards to either the monies are in different places in the budget, or I looked back at multiple years of spending in the lines and said, you know what, there's a pattern here, let's make an adjustment. It's just good, it's just good budgeting. So for the first one, the dues and fees, that is something that has now come through central office as a cost savings measure. Instead of buying a subscription for an online service through primary school, have it be a district expense, and then it doesn't cost as much overall. So that's what you see for that amount of money, $3,000. The media equipment is, I'm very pleased with the fact that we have in this past year made a significant increase in the amount of laptops in our building. And this used to be money that was used to help, kind of a more or less of a grand way, help continue to increase the amount. So I felt because we had such an influx last year that there could be a decrease in this equipment. It does leave some money in the account for example, for things when things break, or some of the SchoolBoard equipment we still need to have. We need to have the ability to be able to buy those things. But it is a fairly significant amount of money that has been decreased to that line, $4,000. And then the next line is in regards to stipends. And it comes from two places. One is I do believe there is an opportunity next year for, we do have detention for students, and typically it's been run by the team leaders for each grade. And to some extent it will probably continue that way. However, I do believe there's, for our house leaders, which are the folks that have a teaching role and also have an administrative role, for them to take on some of those responsibilities. They already do. And also our specialists at times in their schedule have opportunity to help with that. So it'd be like our music PE teachers can help operate that detention, and they do that as well, several of them this year. So it's not necessarily something different. It's just that I think the responsibility will shift more towards some of the people who are doing it right now. We're also looking, the other piece is we're also looking at how that works, because team leaders, for example, have shared that they would like to do some revising and looking at how we operate detention, and really my intent, and I believe theirs as well, is that we want to make it about the learning experience for kids, and how do we support students when they make a mistake, because kids do just like adults, and what's kind of the environment we can create that's respectful and responsible for them. Back to the 3Bs itself. So I'm very hopeful it's going to look different and not be such a traditional sense of. And it certainly, I think it's been over the last 3 or 4 years, it's been sort of an evolution that we've looked at how can it be a time for kids to reflect on the mistake they made, and how can it be a learning experience for them. For example, one of our house leaders the other day was working with a few kiddos that, they were struggling with being able to stay in line and be safe. So, when it was time for their, whatever it was either recess or some other special activity, they just spent some time in a quiet hallway where there wasn't kids, and we're practicing that how do you stay in line. And there was a lot of talk back and forth with the kiddos and the adult. So more relevant and more I would say learning experience is what we want to do. So I'm very excited about where this is going to be going. So, it actually is a cost savings as well. The last is is another shift in responsibility. We have an educational technician who's considered a behavioral interventionist. In their position, they do a variety of things, from supporting students in crisis to also operating small groups, around social skills, which we find increasingly are our needs in our building as our clientele changes a little bit. And this is just a stipend that used to go along for our response team, and I'm just going to be moving the responsibility to the actual interventionist who's in the position of interventionist, and just make it one of the responsibilities versus paying someone to do it. It's primarily paperwork. Because of the statutes in regards to students in crisis, we have a significant amount more paperwork than we used to in regards to just documenting the cases and situations. I'm very pleased that if you look at our data from the past 3 years, it continues to be one where we have less and less students that, for example, need to be in a therapeutic hold. However, we still have times when there's a crisis and there may not be a hold necessarily. However, there needs to be some type of documentation. So we'll just be rolling it into the person's position. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Questions?
I have a lot, but I just want to ask one, and then I'll go at the end. I'm looking at your enrollment.
Yes.
Can you explain I'm sure there's a logical reason. First grade currently has 215, and you're suggesting that second grade will have 181, and that's a substantial drop. Am I seeing it right? It's usually,
Right.
you know, they kind of correlate.
March,
Okay, I had called, Sandy has the answer to this, because I had called.
Then we'll let him answer.
Yeah, because I thought it was them, but it's not them that put this page together.
Well, the sheet-
Sandy.
I'm not sure it's going to answer your question that's being asked, but just the sheet you're looking at, the right-hand column, that's the actual numbers now, today.
so one,
So it's
what we
not projected.
projected last year.
Right, that's what I thought.
The budget,
Yeah.
Last
it says
year.
014-15, that's, the budget is 014-15, but this column is the actual numbers. So
That are there now.
you almost think it's like next year's numbers, but it's actual numbers.
So the 181 is the actual second grade number? That
That's
doesn't
my-
make sense
First
to me
grade.
then.
It's the
That
actual first grade.
correlates with,
The actual first grade number?
that correlates with what we sent out yesterday, the current numbers
So they
across
lost
the district.
somewhere,
Second grade.
in the last year, they lost 30 kids, is what that
I lost more
indicates.
than that.
No,
I-
81,
Yeah, I don't know why it's a
15.
lower,
35.
And 81, yeah.
and
I guess that's a big number, and I just think I need to know what happened, that it dropped that much. And it's just, I mean, I don't need to know it now.
Okay, yeah.
Did they leave? That's a huge chunk of kids that left, and are they going
What- do you know-
private or what?
Do you know if that was always like a low number, kindergarten, Kyle, offhand, or did it
Well,
drop?
it's one of the things, Sandy's right, the numbers come from central office.
Yeah, I
I
get
can,
it.
I can go, it'll take me a moment, but
I don't need it now, Kyle, I just
Okay.
need,
I
like
can give you
later
an
when.
answer. I
Yeah.
definitely can.
Yeah,
I have it on my computer. I thought I had printed off a paper copy from Martha in regards to attendance. It certainly isn't a, a number that big, but one of the challenges we face right now, and I don't think primary is different than any school in this
Yeah.
area, we've got a lot of transient population going on, and so we may, in the course of a year, have a child enroll in our building twice, you know. It's very common. So they show up, you know, in September as a student, no longer a student in November, and then back in January, they're a student again. So it happens quite a bit. You'd be surprised.
no, I just, to be honest, I've never seen this kind of drop in all my years here.
Yeah, I
Usually
can-
there's a correlation, do you
Yeah,
know what I
can-
mean?
Sure, I can have the answer for you, if not
Yeah, I
before
mean,
leave.
if it's a
by Monday.
trend, then it's concerning. If it's not a trend, it's just people
I
are
think Dawn has something.
flowing
Well,
around.
if I may, I mean, so maybe we'll get any data you need,
Yeah.
but I actually have the plain decisions data in front of me. And looking back at 10, 11, so let's use 11 as the, we're in 14.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to give you numbers. So K was 183 in 11. Went
It isn't
to
K, it's
one-
first grade.
So, okay, 208 in 12, 210, 213.
First grade.
If you kind of
to
go
second.
sideways, the year that it looks like the loss was 13.
Oh.
First grade, there was 206, going to second grade, 186. So that particular drop is right there.
Yeah, no, I mean, I just don't,
Maybe,
Get it.
maybe the number is wrong from the
it could
last
be.
year's budget.
So if we could just
Yeah.
get some information, that'd be helpful.
And actually, that's for all of this, that's for all of the schools, because I found it, same thing was in other schools. I guess knowing what the number on the left, the 2013-14 heading,
Is it budgeted?
what are those class sizes? When are they from? So we
Yeah,
know
that's
whether it's a
very
drop.
confusing.
It is.
But it's apples to apples. If it's last year's, what the actual was last year at the budget time, and then
Correct.
That's
the
what we need
actual
to
is
know.
this year, I mean,
Right.
But we don't know.
even though it's a different number, it's apples to apples. That makes sense?
Yes, it's the same thing, it actually, not to get into the weeds, but it's the same thing when you start looking at the FTEs for staff. This is what, back in March was.
Right.
Was it? Doesn't mean that when we opened the doors in September,
September
that
was
was
that
it.
way, right.
Yeah. So it's the same thing with the enrollment numbers too. In kindergarten, there's always a forecast.
Speaking of which, since you brought it up, where is enrollment for next year?
Yeah, it's a forecast, so, you know.
I realize that, but
Yeah.
what do you see?
Yeah.
In your
It's
crystal
hard,
ball.
it's hard right now, because our registrations are lower than they've been in the past couple of years, for screening, which is in April.
Mhm.
One of the beauties of doing screening early is you try to get a better handle on it. We used to do it in
Right.
June, so it
Right.
really made it tricky, to try to figure out, so. You know, we've been averaging somewhere around 200, a little above or a little below. That's what I expect, which would keep, the number of teachers you would need. the same.
Do you know what percentage? I think it's interesting that people haven't, because typically, if you've seen the trend to be pretty much the same, similar
Yeah.
to this
Right.
gig, where are you now compared to last year?
I
this
believe
time.
about 30 students less have, or 30 families less have.
Oh, you
have
can pick that up
screened.
easy. Yeah.
Right.
You can
Yeah,
go
the
from
other
second
piece
grade.
is, it really is an X factor, is the number of students that enroll over the summer.
Yep.
There's been summers where 20 have enrolled, there's been summers where close to 40. That's a class. Difference, so my practice is to look down the middle, it's about 30. If you figure about 30 over the summer, we'll enroll.
Okay, thank you.
I really wish it was more.
Do you also-
Not a forecast, I really wish.
No, I know,
yeah.
it'd be easier.
Do we also look at the planning decisions data
Yeah.
too to inform that?
You know, I think that's part of the confusion, is maybe what we need to do is find out what collaboratively we want to show for numbers, because what's going on is we have Joyce, now Cindy, who was working with the actual numbers all the time, meaning, weekly or monthly, whatever Sandy requests.
She just sent out another.
Yeah, and then you have the state stuff, which is October and April, and then you have planning decisions. And I think sometimes, we think we're supposed to be working from planning decisions, and it ends up being an October date. You know what I mean? There's a little confusion about this. So I think we just need to decide what that snapshot in time is, so that everybody is on the same page with it. I don't think that'll be too hard to do, but we just need some input from you guys, so.
Yeah,
Because I know in years past, the number there on the left was just dropped down to the right.
Right.
It wasn't the actual right now.
So that would be like
that's where my
planning
mind is like, what?
Exactly,
Yeah,
and that would be planning
that's what I said.
decisions. That would be that kind of data, as
Yeah.
opposed to live data. So we'll figure it out maybe with finance or whoever wants to talk about it.
Well, it would be interesting to track what's more accurate,
Yeah.
Is it more accurate what today's number is, or is it more accurate what
Because I
planning
think planning
decisions?
decisions said that, if I'm correct, that this year we're going to have 842 students.
yeah. It's gonna be quite different.
And it's going to be quite different,
Yeah.
so.
This upcoming budget year,
Hmm.
yeah.
So maybe if we might be able to resolve this now, rather than make a big
up to
thing
you.
out of it. It may be that we just decide that it's gonna be our live data at a certain date and time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just go with it.
I would
play with
rather.
it, You know what I mean?
Planning decision is just kind of a guesstimate, really.
Yeah, because it's.
It's an educated guesstimate,
Yeah,
but,
yeah, but.
But I think our
we
live
want to be
data is
off.
probably more accurate.
For the sake of everybody and new people, can you just tell us what planning decisions is?
Yes, actually, it's a private firm, but what they do is cohort survival. So you try to track students in a cohort, through. So is the K class going to be the same in 1, 2, 3, 4? And it's based on a statistical model. And they also do a lot of research around housing starts in both communities to see what that looks like, with data that suggests that there might be, this is hypothetical, 2.3 kids per household, and then they go to the hospitals to see what the live birth situation. So there's a lot of detail to that, but it's not the real deal. So I'm just thinking
I'd rather do real
personally
deal.
that the real deal might be what we want to do.
Yeah.
I don't know what you think.
No, that's good.
Yeah.
I believe that's what you're at. Is that what you're asking for, Kate? What currently do we have per grade right now at primary school?
Yeah,
Okay, I'll get that.
but like I said, I don't need it now.
Yep, I'll definitely do
I'll
it.
use that then to flow.
So can we just stay with it so that we'll do it? So I'm thinking we have to give the report in October to
Yep.
the state. We have to in April as well. But we're ahead of April, so maybe we will use the October report, which is our actual report. It
Yeah.
goes to the state, and maybe do a March 1st, that's our data,
And use those figures?
and use those figures.
On the
Always
left-hand
use the
side and
state
then flop 'em
October,
over,
always
yeah.
use our own March.
Yep.
something
So
like
wait,
that.
Is this current?
I don't know. I haven't
You just got that.
We just got this one.
So what you're saying, the left column you would use October and the right column you'd do a March? Is that what you're saying?
What might be better than looking at each year might be to look at the same year. I'm asking. I mean, I'm thinking it might be better that you look at the year you're in. So your October number was this, and your March 1st number is that, to give you a better feel for where you're gonna be.
It seems like using the March 1st for the 2013-14, use the March 1st numbers on the left,
Okay, yeah.
because those are the most current numbers of enrollment.
So March 1st of
This
last year?
March 1st of, no, I'm thinking this year.
Okay, yeah.
For the left-hand side?
Yeah, because we're in 2013-14, so that tells us where we are at the beginning of the budget season by grade.
Mhm.
And then, although it still could change, I mean, it still could be 35, a difference, then, first grade moves to second, third grade, it's more
I
current.
see what you're saying.
Progressive.
Well, I just wonder if the reason why it was done the way it was is because this is last year's budget, so we made decisions, budgetary decisions, thinking these numbers.
On those numbers.
So in my mind, that's kind of where, okay, so this year there were, at the beginning of.
So how do we get then, I see your point, unless you do another split screen and just say current, March 3rd. Do you know what I mean? Somehow we've got to get the most current. I see what you're saying, that the budget's based on that, but moving forward, making decisions, we need to have an accurate,
A number.
Wouldn't
yeah.
that would be this year's budgeted number?
Well, you could, forgive me for breaking in, but you could use April of last year, because we have to send that to the state. So April before the summer, right?
yeah.
Then you have October if you want it, and then March. I mean, you could have all three.
Let's,
Brainstorm?
yeah,
All right.
let's hash this out later. Jerry, you had something?
Just, I don't know if this is a question for you, Kyle, or for
Give it a
Don, but the change of $290,000, is that mostly based on salary and benefits?
It is.
Okay, that's what I just wanted
It's a big staff.
Yeah, because you don't have any large numbers that you're adding or subtracting. Okay, just want to make sure that's what that was.
Sorry, hi, T.
All right, being relatively new to the board here, I just wanted to ask, and I don't expect you to be able to fully quantify it, but just to give me a sense on, since we've been working with Common Core, what effect has that had on staffing needs? Is it required additional staff, or has it just been a shifting of resources?
I would say it's been more shifting of resources, not a significant increase or increase in staff. It's not, hasn't shown up as an increase in staff.
And has it required more, you're talking about the collaboration, has it required more of the teacher's time outside of what they did in the past in terms of having to needing these development days, or just sometimes before or after school?
I think what you're asking is, has the actual adoption of the Common Core created more time for you just need to meet or plan, et cetera? Teachers are going to need the time to meet and plan. The focus at primary school has been on how to meet the needs of students. There's always going to be needs no matter what the standards are. The part that I do see being different, and I do think it reflects some of the increases that you, specifically the $3,000 to teacher coaches, is because now we as a district have spent time on taking those standards and then making work for our local community, and so they do look a little different. That now that we're at that stage of the process, we do need to put some energy into ensuring that the instructional practices that take place in the classrooms align with those standards. So there may be things that teachers have done in the past for a unit of study or learning activities that no longer align, and so they need to realign. So there does need to be some time and energy put into those. However, we haven't spent a significant amount of time doing that because until you actually have them in a form where you can do that, and I believe that's coming. That's something we'll have end of this year from the curriculum committees. Then we will. Do I see it being a significant or something that you should be concerned about? I don't believe so, and the reason is because we're still going to need to, at a primary school, you're still going to need to make sure that they are able to read, write, it's not gonna like all of a sudden we're teaching potholes, I mean, it's not gonna be that foreign, so I don't believe, and I know nationally there's been some, some states have expressed
Some states have pulled out.
deep concern. One is, we're not just adopting that, we're not just saying, all right, here they are, and putting them right down on top of us. We've been fairly thoughtful about it in my eyes, because we've had curriculum folks working on it, we've had teachers actually developing the curriculum documents based on those. We've been working with the Mass Customized cohort and getting their support, as well as the Great School Partnership. So all of these types of supports that we've and processes we've been using will in my eyes make, and I'm very confident will make it a smooth transition. Doesn't mean we're going to have to spend some energy and time on it. However, I don't think it's to the level that some of the national kind of articles and whatnot have them. Does that help, Pete? I don't.
Yeah, no, I just wanted, from a budgetary perspective, whether it's required more staff, more hours.
No, because the
specialists.
key of our work has been on how do we intervene for students and so that they can all achieve at a high level. So if the standards change, yes, that does mean there's going to have to be a shift, but I see the shifts being minor, not major. Yes.
Thank you.
To follow up on that, you
Sure.
did mention, well, first, are those missing second graders in intervention hold?
What's that?
Are they in
Oh, intervention. Oh, yeah.
intervention?
Yeah, no, I really, there is no one factor that has
I'm
caused that number to be.
I can't help myself
Yeah,
sometimes.
that's okay. It's all right.
Well, you brought up about the comment where you brought up that the standards, I mean, there's going to be work to get up to these new standards. How much higher are they on that primary level? That one we're
Right.
talking about.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
It's not a budget question.
It's really very dependent on the grade and what we're talking about. However, one kind of general statement I would make about it is our students have to become much more proficient at writing than for example, the main learning results, which is really what we're still kind of falling under. We're certainly in a transition time frame between, the fact that there was the main learning results and now there's the Common Core. That is one place. The other is, and this is where I get it back to about instruction aligning with standards, is that there is a much more of an emphasis on the kind of what I would consider the complex cognitive functions. So, for example, the standards for math, more emphasis put on students being able to think about their math, be able not just to know how to problem solve, but how to take for example, a word problem and break it down so when you see certain key words, this is what you do, and can be explained. That's why you do it, maybe even in writing. So there's much more of an emphasis. So because of that, you've got to make sure your instructional practices are aligning with that. If you're instructing and you're using a strategy or a practice that would just get to a point where you know that there's a word problem, your students aren't going to meet the standard. They've got to be able to. I was watching, for example, just around a standard similar to this, I was watching a teacher do a lesson on a math word problem. And the emphasis of the lesson was really about that more complex cognitive function, which was the kids had to be able to explain why they were doing what they were doing. It wasn't so much about getting the right answer. It was about knowing the processes behind it. And in that case, the instruction did align with what I felt the standard was. The teacher.
I'm going to interrupt because this is not a budget question. I think maybe we need to
Okay,
have
sorry.
another time. No, it's okay. Just in the interest of time, because we have.
And you can go
others.
visit him anytime.
Yeah, and maybe we need to have a separate workshop on Common Core.
And I'd love to help with that.
Yeah.
I really would. I
Yeah.
mean, obviously, I want to talk about it. So.
So are there any other budget-related questions? Yes, Pete?
All right, just quickly on the detention piece again, just because I'm not familiar with how that works.
Sure.
Do teachers or staff that provide detention coverage get pay beyond what their salary is? Is that?
Some do. It's when it's a team leader that does it, because they do it during their lunch time, they do it during their lunch recess block, so it's time contractually when they're supposed to be having a break. However, the house leaders and the specialists, it's built into their schedule.
Okay, so the savings that are mentioned here would be from shifting the coverage from people to get additional pay for doing it to people that wouldn't require it?
Yes, that's correct, yes. Yeah, and also the way we're gonna do it, and I don't have all the answers of how it's gonna look, because schedule changes every year. However, it's gonna be, and this probably may not make it clear, but it's gonna be more customized for the grade and for what really happened. And we're doing this already, it's just, we're gonna do more of it, which to me is just better for the students.
Any other budget related questions? Pete, did you have a follow-up?
No, Kate does.
A request, first of all, if you would
Sure.
send an updated flow chart of teacher leaders and coaches so that I can see how that works. And then, do you have a social worker
Yes,
that we pay for?
yes.
So is that where is that?
You're looking at the FTE sheet?
Yeah. Full-time? Yeah?
Well, it's a full-time, it's 2 people,
I don't know. Ask him.
so it's a split position. And it's working really well. I'm really confident in regards to how that is working, and I'm not seeing it right here. To be honest with you, Kate.
Okay. I didn't see it either, but that doesn't mean it wasn't there.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if it's falling under a different name somehow.
Is that, are they our employees?
Yes, so can I just give me a moment to explain a little bit, because I don't think without me explaining, it leaves too many questions
Be
unanswered.
very happy for an explanation.
So, we've shifted the model in regards to how we support students, in regards to, for example, guidance and social work. They work as a team, and, which I believe better use of our resources and better for our students. It follows right along with how the rest of the school operates. So on the student support team is the social worker, who is part-time social worker and a part-time house leader. And then the other social worker, the 2 Sweetser social workers, which are not our employees, but are part of the partnership. They have offices in our building and serve only our students. Our behavior specialists and our guidance person are all part of the team. And so whenever a student is referred to the team, they as a team determine how they're going to serve that student, and they're going to serve the student as a team. Whereas in the past, it was, okay, the guidance counselor will serve the student. Now, it may be that 1, 2, 3 different people serve that student or support that student. And how is that to benefit student? Several reasons. No one's just sitting in their office waiting for something to happen at primary school.
I don't think they have to
Yeah,
wait.
Right. So when 2 to 3 people on a team are familiar with a student, it helps us better support that student because they know. And they also bring different strengths as staff members. So, young children, humans in general, are complex things, complex people, and so to be able to have it's more of a medical model, quite honestly. I mean, you go to the doctors now, you get something serious. There's a team of doctors and nurses that are, are serving you and trying to get you back to health. So that's sort of, and once again, it's probably a workshop, and I know they'd be glad to come in and share how they operate. It's pretty exciting how.
Not for discussion now, but I just wanted you to be aware that there have been some questions about Sweetser in our schools, and that was brought up with Phil when he came,
Okay.
and I personally don't know about anybody else, and I certainly don't need an answer now, but we got some information, but I still have some more questions about that model and the expense involved, if any, by the RSU
Yep.
and the space
I
required.
can talk about that really quickly. They have an office space and they have a phone line. That's the only expenses directly to the district. We provide, we have a contract with them, and then those are the things that we say we'll provide. They use our internet as well, but they have, we have other people who use our internet, there's a guest account. But that's all.
Okay, thank you.
To me, quite honestly, the benefits they provide our students outweighs those expenses. We certainly have to be creative at primary school about how we use our office space, because our office space is
Very limited.
Yeah, and are often
No, I just needed a better,
storage spaces.
and I don't need it now, but thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions?
I have.
Marge?
On the front page,
Yes.
Kyle, you have an addition of, under Ed Support Staff, Instructional Leader / AP, I'm sorry, I don't know what the AP stands for. You went from
Yeah.
0 to 1.8?
Yeah, because it's, once again, it's that moment in time of last March. We had the house leader positions were falling under the stipends, so they fell into this, not, the stipends isn't on here, but that's where that monies came from for that, and then,
So it's not additional money?
No.
it's just a
Okay.
different way
And this
of
is not
categorizing.
1.8 people, it's
No.
1.8 people's worth of time
right,
collectively.
Yes, yeah, and because, you have to report to the state on how, how it looks in regards to FTEs. The AP is for assistant principal because there is no house leader, title, label at the state level, so you have to call them something.
Okay, and you've taken a decrease in your ed techs. Regular ed techs went from 4.83 to 3.5.
Yeah, I asked Holly about that, and,
It's the same answer, Kyle.
yeah, right, yeah.
Yeah, I mean-
I'm getting around to, I'm gonna sound redundant here in a second.
So is this an adjustment? I
It
guess, is this
It
something
the
that
sense of
was,
there is no, just like with what I just shared about house leaders, there is no difference, there's no increase, decrease.
There's no reduction?
It's all the same.
okay.
Yeah, I get where that confusion lies, and actually I had to call Holly, because I was, on that one specifically, I was like, wait a minute, hold on, something doesn't seem right here.
Okay.
And is that the same for the Title I teacher? That goes from 0.6 to 0?
Yes.
So they're being reclassified?
Can I speak? for a
Yeah,
moment? I mean,
it's just
what
confusing.
happens with this, first of all, this, just as a piece of information, this is a manually provided report. It doesn't come directly off the software program. And so what we struggle with this is open the doors from last year, and then you deliberated on the budget and made decisions. So you're really seeing something that's a full year out, do you know what I mean? And you already made the decisions last year to allow for the things that are now in the right-hand column.
But Don, so am I understanding, we make adjustments to whatever, wouldn't that then be reflected on the left-hand side, because that was the final?
No, it isn't, because we go from budget to budget.
Ugh.
This report, I really need to talk to Finance Committee
Yeah.
about this report. This
Okay.
is something that needs a discussion.
Yeah, because that right-hand
Let's
column,
have
I would,
a meeting and
yeah,
let's put it on the
I would
agenda.
just as soon see something that said adjusted or something, but yeah.
But thanks for the
adjustment.
questions. I don't want you to have, I want you to have the the reality.
Right.
Yeah, we don't want to be
And what you've
confused.
written about is the reality, so. Okay, Pete.
All right, this might be a question for Don. It's a line item, question, page 61 of 89.
Purple?
Purple. Second line down, administrative salary.
That's a holding place.
Yes.
So I'm looking between 14 revised and.
Yeah, see, thank you, and actually, Marge called me on that yesterday. That really reflects, again, the change in the leadership model at the primary school. So we've talked about the leadership model. Kate's asked for, the schematic, which we'll give to you all next week, but essentially, we used to have a full-time assistant principal. In the last two budgets, we've had people that were distributed as a teacher gaining stipends for the administrative work. This year, as Kyle pointed out, you folks voted for 1/5 of an administrator, 2/5, and all this, if you kind of remember, at the primary school. So this reflects those three individuals now being appropriately charged fully
To admin.
to the admin. So it's not a change, but it's appropriately
Pulled out
of regular
Stipend.
instruction.
And that's why there's no increase in administrators on that front FTE page.
Correct. Correct.
So we're paying out as administrators, but they're not classified as administrators.
Well, they are for the fifths that you folks approved a couple of months ago. They go through the official report, as Kyle was referring to. The state needs to know where we're paying for administrative versus instructional staff. So this is just to finally put it in a place where it needs to be in terms of the budget, but it's no change.
March.
How many people are in this line item?
There's four
Is this,
four pieces. There's
Is-
a full and then some pieces.
this is you
Yeah.
and those four
Right.
folks?
Right.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
No, but I think and on that, on a similar vein, if we go to the very bottom of that page, that is the placeholder for the 100,000.
Yeah, that's, the whole
for
cost center, as pointed out, really
Right.
is due to the health insurance increase and
Right,
projected salary increase.
okay, thank you.
You have a question?
Thank you. Just for clarity, you're going to check on the social worker and whether or not it's included in this budget? Or are we assuming that it's included in this budget but not on the front check page?
I'll check.
Okay. Because otherwise, the budget number's not right. And then, just a quick, this is like, definitely, I'm waiting in my hip boots, but for supplies, do you guys do, yeah.
Roots
Roots,
reusable?
You do? Okay. Thank you.
All right, any other questions?
I don't want to beat this to death, but just because you said this is four pieces, the figure we're
The
talking
admin.
about.
Yep.
But we're not going to find
5 people.
three pieces where there's large reductions then?
No, because
Is
they're,
it a-
they're pieces, and they're distributed throughout the budget itself.
There's going to be lots of little,
Yeah,
since it's stipends. Okay. It just, I was kind of skimming through and I,
yeah, you wouldn't be able to,
But the
there's so many
overall-
staff members in that distribution,
okay.
yeah.
Yes.
Okay, and I hate to do this because it's me every year. Okay, on subs, on the sub line, initially back, and we did, from 12 to 13, we started to reduce that. I know Kyle did some restructuring when he had meetings and everything, but I've noticed it's slowly, over the years, it's creeping back up again.
Can you show what page you're
Oh,
on?
I'm sorry.
Green.
Green, 68 of 117. Temporary salary, subs.
Yeah, I think I can speak to that. I think there's, I haven't had the time to be able to get you the report that you asked from last Wednesday night, which I'll try to get to you next week. But essentially, what I have to say is, you know that you have negotiated agreements where people have the ability to take sick time up to 12, 15 days. We also have a number of things going on in district which might be not fully long-term. There might be pregnancies where we have someone out that's being paid for in terms of the health, that's the sick leave, excuse me. We also have tragic health situations with some people, a handful of people, that require them to be out, maybe have extended sick leave, for example. So what I want to say is Sandy's been very clear with the principals to have conversations with people at point of supervision and evaluation, to the extent that principals look at those to see if they're in line with what they should be. So it's really difficult to correlate one year to the next, not knowing what the catastrophic type illnesses are. So just as a side, people are working hard, but it doesn't mean it's going to go down. And by the way, we're aging as a staff, so that's what, but I'll have that
Speak
data
for
for you.
yourself.
Yeah.
Some of us are quicker than others.
Any other questions?
Nope.
All right, we flubbed you completely.
Yeah.
Just
Go
find
enjoy
those
the
kids, will you?
sunshine.
Go,
Find those kids.
Find
will
those
you?
kids.
Go enjoy the sunshine.
yeah, go enjoy that track meet.
That's right, track meet, here
Yeah.
we go.
All right, and next up we have,
Happy time.
you're welcome.
Thank you.
Cindy Curtis, principal at the Manchester School. Okay.
Sorry, I'm
I'm
infringing
glad
on
you
your
weren't
space.
first.
Should have been, right?
Well, good morning. And again,
Morning.
it's always a pleasure to be here to talk about Manchester School. I can address any questions you have about our goals and our moving forward, our progress and so forth, that you have a copy of already. But I thought I would start just with the budget part of it, because ours is actually very small. We had no increases. We asked for no increases at all. We did not really look at teacher positions, because if you do look at enrollment, we're staying fairly much the same. We'll have 22, possibly 23 students in some classrooms. So given whatever changes happen over the summer, we should say very stable with our enrollment. So that wasn't a question. But looking at our programs and the things that we have moving in our school and the things that are most critical to students, we did have to look at the budget and come up with some cuts that made sense and would least affect our students and their programs. So on page 3, I believe it is, page 2, I think, on yours, you can see where I've listed what our cuts are. We had 1603 in supplies, 2607 in textbooks, 200 in equipment. We took out the homework club stipend for a savings of $2,488. We had a support staff reduction for $4,068, and one noon monitor position for $3,448. And talking to supplies, I heard Kyle talking earlier, we have gradually decreased the supply account. We don't have that many that we can adjust, and when we have to cut, we obviously have to go there. Being as frugal as we can as we move forward, I have to say that we've had a lot of support from the community. We've had grants, donations, big boxes of all kinds of things, folders and things that kids can use from Walmart, and other businesses in the area are always glad to help us out. So we will certainly take good advantage of that as we move forward with the cuts that we do have to take. And you also know that our technology and hardware, all the hardware, the programming that we have, assists with this. We're not as much a paper-using school as all schools are now. A lot of their curriculum, their testing and so forth is available online. So that's helpful. Homework club will not be provided after school for students next year, and it has been a valuable program for students that do need that extra support, but we will be taking a look with our leadership team at maybe restructuring that and offering it in a different way. We also decreased the office support staff by 9 hours a week. It was a 29-hour-a-week position that this lady was assisting our secretary, Amy. So she'll be going down to 20 hours, which, again, it means just everybody else has to work that much harder, and they will. It's a busy office. I don't know how many of you have been able to frequent the Manchester office, but I think lots of things have changed, and the way parents come into the school, and then we have all the safety issues, security, the measures, and the screening of all of that. But we will certainly make sure that we handle the office well and pull in the support that we need. And also the reduction of one noon monitor. We have 2 noon monitors. We have 3 large lunches at Manchester, and we have had 2 noon monitors in there with them. Now, this will require some restructuring because we obviously have to have at least 2. And if I had my wish, I would have more. So we will have to be creative again with our leadership team and take a look at what we have available to us and make sure the support is in there for lunchtime. So those are our decreases. No increases to talk about. I have listed for you in the sheets that you have some of the goals and objectives of Manchester School. And to keep it short, I won't read the goal. Manchester School, number 1, will increase its capacity to deliver our curriculum. And you all know that we're working on student-centered instruction. Our staff has been very involved in all this work. In fact, Manchester jumped in probably 3 years ago in a small way after visiting some other schools. Our teachers are very innovative, and we're excited about what it meant for students, providing individualized instruction in the area of need. So they've been involved. They've attended all kinds of district meetings, all the big meetings with B. McGarvey and the RISC people. This year, we've had a number of teachers going out to the art and science of teaching and reasoning processes. Kyle was talking earlier about what children are asking, what we're asking them to do now, the higher complex reasoning processes. And based on all that we've learned as an educational community, we are continually collaborating, looking at data, and working in a continuous improvement model. I know in prior presentations I've talked about what a data-rich school we are. We have all our screening testing that goes on for all students 3 times a year. We have our regular testing, NWEA, and NECAP, and we also have progress monitoring for those students that are at risk, which helps us identify right away within 2 weeks if there's something that needs some attention. So, and I guess I would have to say, too, our teachers are very adept at using that, and we have 2 great teachers in the lead, our standards-based teacher and our Title I math teacher, who are the keepers of all that information. And I was thinking about it last night when I was looking this over. We have huge spreadsheets on every child, color-coded with whether they're meeting standards, not meeting the standard, partially or exceeding the standard in every category. And we can go to those tests and look for the exact instruction that they need to address those issues. So the next, number 2 under our goals and outcomes, we've talked about the student-centered model in that we have to use the most capacity of every adult, every professional and semi-professional, paraprofessional person in that building to provide all the different things that students need because they are so varying. We've been working on collegiality, which I think we already were very collegial, but this is a different level. It's just like a different level of how we're delivering education now. Because we have to make the best use of every person, we have to collaborate in many different ways and across many different groups to provide exactly what students need. We have been, it was interesting, we went through a SWOT, it's called a SWOT analysis, which means strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats to collegiality. And of course, you know that one of them that always pops up whenever we talk about anything like this is time. But there were other things that came out of that we are working on as a school team and as small teams that will certainly help us move forward as we proceed with this in-depth work. And talking about data, if we look at one or two specific areas, we analyze our kneecaps the minute they come in, long before we get the formal reports from the state. And we use those to go forward as we work with curriculum. So we're looking forward, and again, I heard Kyle mention this, our K-5 curriculum committees under the direction of Christine Hessler are developing and refining and reviewing the standards for all levels, and they have released the standards for grade spans now, and I believe what we have is grade 3-5. They further will be refining them and passing them down to us for each grade, breaking them up further. In fact, our teachers provided some information for Christine, and they did in every other school in this RSU too, to go forward and figure out where exactly do the third grade standards go, where exactly do the fourth go, or which ones go with the fifth. So that will be important work that will direct some of the summer work, and our teachers are just very anxious to move forward. Another thing that came out of analyzing our 2012 kneecaps was that we needed some work on constructed response in writing, which is a fairly complex task if you do it the right way. We had teachers that developed a unit over the summer. We implemented it immediately when the fourth graders and fifth graders came in, and it was amazing to see the response because I have a lot of data regarding that, but what I wanted to share with you today was that the students exceeding the standard, we raised that number by 9 points, which is huge when you're talking about kneecap. And it was just because of the teaching of the process and the practice that was provided in only 3 weeks, because we started in September and the test is in early October. So just kind of going along with that, we analyzed our 2013 kneecaps the minute they came in, and that's where we knew that we'd done so well in constructed response. Math constructed response is a whole different process, and we realized we needed to work on that too. The higher level thinking skills, multi-step math problems, and explaining what you're thinking and why you're doing it. We happen to have, we're so lucky at Manchester, a teacher that had just completed her master's degree, and one of her research projects was how to teach math constructed response. She presented that to our facilitators, and yesterday she presented it to our entire staff. So now they are using that process, and I have to say I was amazed myself. I don't think I really had ever been taken through the formal process of how to do it correctly. We'll look for some great results from it. And some teachers have been using it a little bit in their classrooms and have seen results from it already. So we're excited about that. The number 2, the last one on that page, we are also working on authentic applications and multi-step real-world problem solving through each unit. Again, as we move forward with student-centered learning, the learning really takes place and they understand it when they can apply it in a situation. And so we have these authentic applications kind of woven throughout our units or matrices, as you may sometimes hear them referred to. And it becomes when you walk around the classrooms, it's amazing. I was thinking of one that I watched the other day. The students were in geometry. They were working on parallel lines and intersections and all that. And I brought in, if I can pull it up quickly, an example of what they had to do with that. They had, of course, work to do in the beginning. It's a project building a city, a geometry map project, angles, lines, and triangles. And it asked them to create, and I saw them working on it with these huge posters, a town with 2 sets of streets that are parallel, one street that intersects another street to form an obtuse angle, one street that is a line segment, and you can see there's a whole list. They had a whole lot of things to do, and I won't read them all to you. But I can tell you, by watching what they were doing, I could tell they understood what they had learned, and it was amazing. We were also very lucky, as we think about these applications, to have for professional development a young lady named Courtney Belolin, who came from Mount Ararat Middle School, works for Bill Zima. I think his name is fairly familiar to everyone who is involved in the student-centered world. She worked with our teachers on how to even further incorporate these authentic learning processes and experiences, interwoven, not just maybe one project at the end of a unit, but interwoven throughout the whole unit. And I have to tell you that my staff was very enthusiastic at the end of the day last year. They felt like they've done a lot of work, they've used it with the students, they're going forward, but they have more new and great ideas. So again, we'll be anxious to hear what comes of that. And that actually is the end of my budget presentation. I'm open to questions.
Great.
It's actually a question for you. If we're in a budgetary meeting, talking about budgetary things, but things sometimes when they're going through the overall summaries and goals will pop up questions, so how do we?
I think we need to, just in the interest of time, we need to just table, make a note of your questions, and you can either address Cindy directly, or if it's a bigger group question, then we can arrange to
I
have
think
Cindy
it
come
leads
back.
having that workshop that we talked about, I think that would be.
Yep.
I would think that you would find there would be a lot of people interested in presenting in that workshop or being part of it.
Yep. Any questions relating to the budget? Pete?
Mine is simple.
No, I mean,
If he doesn't raise his hand, we can tell by his look.
no, not really a question. Just more of a comment. Just thanking you for your approach this year. I mean, it's a perfect illustration of the times that we're facing right now, where you've requested no increases, but unfortunately, there have been increases due to the rising cost of healthcare, and it's a perfect illustration of how job or hours reductions are a result of it. So, in terms of not increasing anything else, just thank you.
That's amazing, Cindy, huh?
Straightforward.
Amazing, yes. Am I all done?
Thank you.
Eric, did you have another
No,
question?
no. A couple about that, but we'll
Right.
do it another time.
Yeah, okay.
I'll be
You've made a
respectful.
note, you've made a note of them.
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
I'm always glad to talk to any of you, and I see Eric and Marge often, around the school, and can answer questions by email. Some of them are, I know, pretty simple, but you just need to know the answer, and I'm always available.
And we talked to Bill about getting a buzzer for Amy, because I know that's a lot of her time is, if someone doesn't hear the door open, she's gotta go back over and hit the button. That takes a lot of her time, so
Yeah.
I think he said he was addressing that.
Yes, they've been doing some work up there, yeah. Well, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a good morning.
She has to go
Enjoy
back, because she has
the
to be able to
spring-like
see who's
day out
there.
I will
there.
certainly do that.
The buzzer should be letting anybody in.
We've reclaimed a little bit of time, Randy. Sorry, we're 10 minutes
I
behind.
think she releases it, I don't care,
Um,
just stand there.
okay, we're gonna
I'm try it and go-
Have a
That's
brief
out there.
break. If we could just maybe take a brief break.
Yeah, I could,
Do you see this?
Thank you.
Before I start my formal stuff, just wanted to thank Pete and Marge for coming out for a tour a couple of weeks ago. Always happy to do that, and it's nice to have you folks see the building when it's in operation. I mean, we've had a number of facilities tours for people involved in that, but it doesn't give you the feel of the school culture and how the day kind of progresses and so forth. So anytime, let's open it, well, maybe not anytime, but give me a little warning. We can usually make it work. Some of the things you're going to hear from me are going to sound a little bit similar to some of the things you heard from Cindy and Kyle, and I see that as a good thing as far as Raymond Elementary School goes. There is a lot more cross-pollination, so to speak, between the three elementary schools, teaching teams at grade levels, specialists in different subject areas, really getting to know each other, looking at curriculum, working together to find the best practices, best ideas. And that's a real plus for a small school because sometimes we get a little isolated and insulated and you've only got a couple of colleagues to bounce stuff off. And then you get into a broader context and you've got, 12 or 13 teachers at a grade level. And so we steal ideas freely, the best teachers always do, from each other. So that's great. One of our big areas of focus at Raymond Elementary this year is collegiality, and I think you heard that a little bit from my colleagues. And we kind of determined that RES had a very congenial staff. They've always been there to help each other, but collegiality is a little more complex than that. And what we found is we sometimes have a hard time having hard conversations and debates about important things without it feeling personal or without it bogging us down. And so how do you work at that professional level and have hard conversations about what you think is best for kids and how to organize? And the reason this is so important now is in a proficiency-based model, there's teams of teachers working with groups of kids. And in an old style elementary model, Mrs. So-and-so went in her room with her kids. These are my kids for the year, and I'm ultimately responsible for them. And in the new model, it's we are responsible for these kids. And that's a small but important shift in thinking. And so they have to be able to function as a team and really wrestle with philosophy sometimes and wrestle with, what's the best way to deliver this? Or even it might be, you're really good at teaching a certain concept. Maybe you should teach it to all the second graders. And I'm really good at teaching this, and maybe I should be teaching that. So that work is going to continue, and we've done some surveys on team functioning. We've had lots of team leader discussions around how to be efficient with our team meeting time and also make sure that everybody has a chance to have their opinions heard and really wrestle with some of these new ideas that they're faced with in a proficiency-based model. So under the goals section, that's the one thing I wanted to really point out because the others are interrelated to that. And response to intervention, we've got, I feel, a lot of good momentum with the ed techs that we have, with the standards-based teacher that we have, who's also basically coordinates Title I, and she's a standards-based teacher. And so, that's something that needs to stay at the forefront, but we're now in 3 or 4 years of implementation, and it's really showing some good growth, especially at the first and second grade level. So that will continue. And just reflecting more on how we're doing. We're trying to be a little more thoughtful about not just data, but how we operate together and that collegiality piece, and how that then impacts students and achievement, basically. So under the next section, you'll notice I mentioned collegiality, the risk model. Where it refers to SLAM, that's students learning about math, which happens every day. But the teachers came up with, the 3rd and 4th grade teachers came up with this last year, this little term. But what it really is about is grouping kids twice a week, most weeks twice a week, around the specific content strands in math based on where they are in that strand. So they pre-test all the students, and we do this in 2 grade level spans at a time with the exception of kindergarten. So 1st and 2nd grade teachers work together during SLAM time. So at any given time you go into a room that might be all 1st graders, it might be all 2nd graders, it might be blended. And the same thing happens at 3-4 where they're pre-testing kids. So it's not a sort of ability grouping or leveled thing like back when I went to elementary school, you had this reading group that always stayed together and that reading group, and it's not that rigid in this model. And so this is their first attempt at kind of grouping and regrouping kids on a fairly regular basis. I mean, they switch these groupings up every 6 to 8 weeks. And they look at the pretests, they look at the current performance of the student in that strand, for instance, geometry or place value, and things like that. And then they decide how they want to group them. The students work on a set of standards, they track their learning. When the teacher sees that they've reached proficiency in all the pieces that they need in that strand, some of them then move to a different room while that's going on so that they can continue to progress because they've mastered what they needed to master that other teacher was doing the instruction for. So it started at 3rd and 4th grade last year. It's now spread to 1 and 2. And kindergarten does it in a little less of a, there's some movement between the kindergarten rooms, but it's a little different situation in kindergarten, so it has a little different feel to it. So one of our goals for next year is to try to look at how do we do that more in language arts. If certain students are having trouble with, say, understanding capitalization rules, should they be grouped together while other kids are working on other pieces of writing skills? And we do have a few kids that are moving grade levels, that their reading ability is so far above the average grade level peer that they're attending language arts in a higher grade level. That's happened before. That's not a radical thing. But these aren't necessarily kids that are identified as being gifted. They're just ahead of pace. And so we're trying to challenge them to stay ahead of pace. And it seems to be working pretty well. You worry a little bit about the developmental part of it. If you've got a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old in the same classroom, does it cause problems? And so far, the answer is no. But we were a little apprehensive with a couple of kids because you might have a student who's particularly able to read and comprehend at a very high level, but still needs some other supports socially, and then we don't want to, mess things up on that end either. So that's one of the goals for next year is looking at that in more depth. CCSS is the Common Core State Standards, and Kyle mentioned, the work that's been going on in the curriculum groups. That is not finished, but it's getting close, particularly in math and ELA at the elementary level. So as we go into the next school year, there will be some adjustments made. They're not huge adjustments, like on the math matrices that teachers have developed and the scoring rubrics that they're working on. They're going to go in, they're going to look how it fits with the new district curriculum, make those adjustments, and then hopefully we'll be able to build more common assessments so that we say, here's the standard. We know collectively what proficiency is on that standard, and ideally across the district, not just in a building. So that's complicated, and it's going to take some time. And the other thing coming down the pike is Smarter Balanced Assessment is going to be the state test, not the kneecap. And although it's helpful to look at the kneecap from this year and say, do we have any glaring areas of weakness for a certain group of kids, which we're doing, but then next year doing some just released items and sort of trial run, kids getting used to what the Smarter Balanced Assessment questions will look like. This is a nationally developed test, not a local New England test. So that's something that'll take a little time, and who knows how that'll all come out. But same song from me as you heard from Cindy. There's no increases here that aren't accountable for sort of open the door costs. There's no changes in staffing levels at RES. There will be some shifting of who needs to teach at what grade level, how many teachers we need at what grade level. Right now, it looks like somebody from 3rd grade will end up teaching 2nd grade next year because those numbers will go down. But as you got into it before, I'll give you an example of how tricky it is to figure out class size. When we were here last year at this time, it was looking like 4th grade was going to be smaller than 3rd grade. Mm-hmm. By November, that was the opposite. So we had 51, and at one point 52 students in 4th grade. We thought we were going to have 46. So those
Good
grades
teachers.
are maxed. 25 students in a fourth grade classroom, to me, is kind of pushing the limit. Third grade, on the other hand, had fewer students. So you walk next door and you see 16, 17, and you think, well, we can't afford this, small class sizes like this. But the balancing act is a moving target, and it will even change in the fall. So third and fourth grade next year, we'll have 4 teachers, I'm guessing, for about 85 kids. Should be good. If that number goes up significantly, I'm going to get a little nervous. And we're trying to keep the class sizes smaller, obviously K to 2 as board policy and state policy and so forth. So same number of teachers might be shifted around
Excuse
a
you.
little bit. I don't know, get so used to phones going off, it's like.
Sorry.
I would like to just make a note of something about, I think, what we're asking of the staff to do, and there was sort of a question about Common Core. Does that mean, more work or more time or more money? I think what we've done collectively, and this has happened outside of education, but we're asking teachers to take on a bigger load in general. So class sizes have, in general, increased as they deal with more students per day. And that's not just the classroom teachers, that's also the music, art, phys ed. They see more kids in a week, their groups are bigger, and there may be more groups, maybe more class time. And also, we're working on curriculum, we're working on changing how we do business to a proficiency-based model, and different people are at different stages of that individually. Some of them were already there mentally, philosophically, 3-4 years ago. Others are still trying to adjust. So, I think we're really maximizing. We're asking a lot, but we're getting a lot. Just want to recognize that, that teachers have been asked to pick up a little more of the burden on a daily basis.
Just to clarify, or just from what I've observed when we've had teachers and interacted with teachers, there's a lot of enthusiasm about putting the time in and being a part of the solutions in this. Would you agree with that?
I do, yeah.
Okay.
And, I said.
It's not like the mandate coming down on top of them, as Kyle was saying, but they're a
Right.
part of this process, because they need to own it.
And they do, and.
But that's a lot of time and effort.
Speaking for the RES teachers, the vast majority of them are very conscientious. They take everything to heart. And when Christine came to the district, I said, these are my worker bees, because once they know what the task is, they go at it 100%. And so that leads to a little bit of stress
Right.
and people getting tired out. And sometimes it's like, we'll get there, guys. This isn't going to be done in the next 3 weeks. And that's more my role sometimes, is just saying, we're doing fine, we're on the right track, we're making progress, we're making improvements. You can't do it all in the next year or the next 6 months, but easier said than done.
Thank you for clarifying that.
So, and as far as cuts, to reach my budget target, there's no staff going. That means supplies, equipment, library books, replacement of texts. And texts can mean things like novels for class reading groups, things like that. So we've got about, and also equipment, about $4,000 less in equipment purchases. Last year, we purchased some, we have more computers in the classrooms now at RES, but then you need more peripheral things. So we purchased LCD projectors, we purchased a few document camera projectors and things like that. We won't be doing that next year. We'll just stay with what we have. We also had a big purchase in the music program for recording equipment. That won't need to happen because it already has. So that's not, for a year, that's okay, we can live with that. But it also does mean several $1,000s in supplies, not having repair money for equipment. If something goes down, it's probably going down, and that's that. And there is a real need for more fiction literature, like 6, 8, 10 copies of any given book that teachers can use for reading groups in the classroom. we haven't been replacing those very much in the last couple of years, so now we're at a point where we don't have a lot of copies of certain things, or enough copies. They've been taped together about as much as they can be taped together and so forth, pages falling out. So there's a little bit of scrambling going on and trying to make that work, and unfortunately, that scrambling's going to continue. We do use Ruth's reusables. We have had a lot of community support with supplies, both, businesses and individuals, which is great, but I also think we need to be realistic about how small these amounts can get in these types of lines before it really hampers teachers spending their time on what we want them doing, not trying to figure out where to get the folders or how to get the materials, because I want them focused on instruction. It's not obviously not going to be throw a lot of money at it just because, but we're down to, can we have $60 for these supplies for first grade math? That's the types of questions I get now. And right now, it's take it out of Innisbrook fundraising money, things like that. So that's pretty much where I'm at with RES.
Okey-dokey. Pete?
All right, thank you. I'm having a lot of trouble just reconciling some of these things. Looking at the FTE sheet,
Yep.
if we're just going down to the bottom, and again, I don't know where this data gets derived from, but it's saying staff going from 37 down to 30.7, which,
Right. So some of the things on this sheet are not in my budget. They're in special ed budget, they're in facilities. And then there's also some adjustments here. So you've got your left column with what was budgeted. I made some adjustments to the stipends and the team leaders, the RTI team. We reduced the number of staff who are getting stipends. That gets aggregated into this too. So when central office figures those, it's like 0.25 for team leader reduction and point such and such for response to intervention team. So that's how they track it, and then they put it all together as a final number. So it looks like Bill's, looking at,
Reducing
a
Kitchen's
custodian.
looking at a little adjustment there. Yeah, custodial ground, sorry.
yeah, I could only find like 2.25, a total of 2.25 in terms
But
of reduction.
those stipends also are in the instructional salaries line. And so we've actually already made those reductions. Those ended up being unfunded positions for this year due to how I structured the teams. So there's a 1-2 team and a 3-4 team instead of having a team leader at each grade level. So those savings get taken out. It comes in the teacher line, in the instructional salaries line, but it isn't actually a person losing a job. It's just some additional pay that they had.
Are you adding the
things.
numbers up and saying it doesn't equal 30.7? Is that what you're saying? Or the
Well, yeah, both.
yeah.
The difference, yeah.
Yeah, I think that maybe that's just, again, we've got to get this sheet cleaned up, and we need to, yeah.
But then, to carry on with this, when we're looking at the purple sheets, because I'm trying to figure out where the $96,000 of,
Right, cuts.
$97,000 of cuts is coming from, and I'm looking at 57,000 in terms of teacher salary. Let's see, what page is that on?
66 of 89, I can see it.
Yeah, 66 of 89, halfway down the page. Professional salary teacher, we've got a decrease of 57,000, which, then you're looking on the previous page, $8,000 of health insurance costs, which are associated with that position, I'm assuming. So, I just don't understand.
what
if there's
position
no
is
reduction.
There's it gets tricky, and I get lost sometimes because, we might have somebody that's paid as an ed tech partly out of Title I money, which is federal money, and partly out of local money, and you don't always know how much of that is going where until you get the Title I figures, which we don't have yet for next year. I mean, I guess we have an estimate, but, or you have somebody that's working, I don't have this right now, but it could happen. They're an ed tech, and they work 32 hours a week, but 16 hours are for special ed. So if half of their pay comes out of that pool, half their pay comes out of that pool. Like all the social worker, for instance, at RES comes out of special ed budget, none of it's regular ed, but that may not be the case for every building. So, I mean, you'd have to,
So, but I think, but the question, even Cindy's budget with no additional additions had an increase, and your budget has a significant decrease. So how did you manage that?
well, there's cuts in,
Tell us your magic.
yeah, no magic. Don's going to save me in a minute, I know he is. Maybe he's going to save me right now.
This
Yeah, I
isn't
was-
represented the increase that they would get anyway.
That's what I'm saying. It doesn't, there's
The
no.
placeholder's not
See,
here.
what, again, what we're comparing to is the FY '13 budget, which
Which
was
wasn't the
approved.
actual.
And then they brought in information that they had changes for '14 last year that doesn't show.
Right.
This form isn't doing what we need it to
Yeah.
do, and it's extremely confusing.
Yeah.
Wait, so the fiscal year 14 revised is not,
It's not in terms of this
Well-
sheet, which is a manually calculated sheet from all the information Randy just described,
Right.
which is part of the difficulty with it. What I will
So we're
just
not
wanna
comparing the actuals, we're comparing the budgeted.
That's right.
And that's why
one
we're
of the
seeing a
problems.
major
Then-
minus there.
And I have to say also, I mean, you do, I'm not saying you need to, you have allowed, and we need flexibility in the way that we staff for students. And so the area that's easiest to talk about really is, if you think about it, is the student services, special services, where the services follow the child. So we have to make adjustments, and when we do, it might be that we don't need, I'm just using hypotheticals, as much behavioral and we need more autism. We don't spend more money, but we have to make the change. And the instructor for autism is charged differently than the instructor for behavior. So this goes on with 750 people all the time. I just need to make people really comfortable that the numbers work and that we are on task with making sure, this is your most important area in terms of how we could go south, if you will, with that many employees not knowing and being very careful where they go. The other, forgive me, kind of piece about this is the state required that we continue to hone down on where we're spending money so that they could track and make their decisions about whether we're spending our money appropriately. So these books that used to be maybe, 15 pages have gone to 2,300 line items. So I think we have to kind of think about things in more general terms. Or we're going to, because we can get so bogged down.
But I think my question on page 66 of 89 is there's a decrease of almost $57,000 in teacher salaries. So how can it be that much lower? Because we should have a placeholder increase, and that just seems like it couldn't.
Well, I can try to answer that. I can't remember, Randy, whether or not you had reductions last year. I know that we did across the district, and we moved people up and down from primary school to Raymond Elementary. That would have been part of it, for example. So the staffing is, you're looking at a full year plus ago of staffing, and you made determinations last year in the budget. This form is killing us, and I don't know
So
what
as
to do
long
with it.
as the increases are in here for,
Yeah.
I don't want us to not have it budgeted
Yeah.
that they get their increases or that the health insurance, it's all in here.
Absolutely.
Okay.
in there. Yep.
yeah, we
Just
did have
needs-
we did have a full teaching position eliminated last year.
Yeah.
so this
that
column
probably
fiscal year
represents-
14 would represent what was,
But I don't see
the
it.
revised one would represent what we passed or so forth in terms of the budget, but then after that, then there was an elimination of a position. So we funded a position and then decided that we didn't need it.
Really, what's going on is we had a certain number of people in 13. You made decisions for reductions in force in 14 that doesn't show in this white form. You see what I'm saying?
No, I'm just looking at the purple.
No, but if
one.
you look at the purple, Don, that's what's confusing us, is it's also, I think, maybe wrong on the purple thing, because we did reduce that teacher during the budget, 14 budget.
Right.
Last year, but it's not reflecting, it seems to not be reflecting.
Okay, I'll make a note of that, and I just think,
Okay, I'm gonna,
Finance,
that's fine.
yeah.
Yeah, we can figure that out.
Yep.
I understand your confusion too, but
Yep.
it's, we'll get some more information and figure that
definitely.
out.
And
but-
thank you for it. I mean, we want to make sure you have the data you need.
Well, and that we have the right numbers.
Yeah.
I'm very confident of that. I just
Okay,
need to say
yeah.
that.
Okay, I'm
Well-
confident as well,
Yeah.
but we just need to assure everybody, yeah.
And on my request form, in that last number 4 box, I mean, that's where that kind of hits the road.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
there's $10,000 plus dollars of cuts to what we currently are using for techs, supplies,
yeah.
equipment, and so forth. The stipends, those are real cuts. We actually did them already, but they were budgeted for. So that's, the other thing that happens is there's some fluctuation with the things that, in the supply sort of lines that central office keeps track of, copiers, postage, those types of things. You know, I don't get to recoup that somewhere else.
Right.
Those things go up and down year to year, so.
Oh, Marge, sorry.
Randy, don't you have a librarian? It just shows 0 for
I have
librarian.
a library tech, so she shows up as an ed tech.
Okay.
Again, things wrong.
And nobody for guidance? Or is that the one person who splits their time, who's across the
And what's kind of evolved for guidance is that, well, and administration, is that at one point, Deb Hutchinson was an instructional leader. She was still doing, we were still paying her partly as a guidance person, partly as an assistant principal. We basically just said, she's the assistant principal. She still does guidance activities. She goes into kindergarten and first and second grade classrooms and does guidance instruction type activities with those kids. So she's got kind of a dual role, but it's basically budgeted as administration. We have one guidance counselor who lives in the Jordan Small budget, but also helps out at RES. And you can get down into the minutia of, you know, is she point to at RES or,
I don't know.
and it gets even more confusing. So that's how it works.
Okay.
I mean, there's,
Thanks.
Eric?
Question for Don, probably. So, back to what they were talking about, the reduction of staff that was budgeted, it's showing a deficit, or, you know, a reduction. Where does that money go? If they get rid of somebody mid-year, you got half of that dollar amount, that's not gonna be spent, where does it go?
That's a good question. It came up just earlier. What happens is you have an undesignated fund balance, so it falls to that. I liken that to a savings account, if you will, but we do not spend to the limit. So to the extent that you, and I'm going to use the example that was brought up earlier, we budgeted in this year's budget $10,000 to the extent we could get an SRO person in the Raymond schools. Things are going on there fine, there's no issue with that, but they didn't require the money. We're not going to spend the money. We don't say, hey, Randy, you got $10,000, you know, go get your textbooks. That doesn't happen. It drops to the undesignated fund balance, which is the accounting side of things. So at the end of the year, you would anticipate that there's going to be money left over, at least in that account. But what I have to do is manage other issues that you are aware of that occurred in other arenas and do the balance. So you may not see 10,000 exactly.
That's fine, it goes in a fund, you allocate it where it needs to go.
Yeah.
And is an SRO person a good thing or a bad thing?
It's a good thing.
Okay, I don't know all the acronyms.
I'm sorry, school resource officer.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Thank you for, yeah, we get into that.
Okay, we gotta move
I
on.
figured it was a good thing.
Kate, did you have a question?
Just a comment,
Oh,
whenever.
go for it.
Okay. You know, when I look at the 1 to 14, and I know you would agree that that ratio is low. It really.
sorry, get it.
I'm sorry, am I on the
Which,
right?
what are we looking at?
Third grade,
Third grade,
which she's talking now about putting down to second grade.
right. No, I'm aware of that, but it really speaks to the balancing act of a reduction in population, and what a juggling act that is as far as class size, and what we can afford to do, and how, I think we have to have a little bit of a long view, that at some point, we may have to think about a strategy. How are we gonna deal with this? Are we gonna be happy with the 1 to 12? Or how, I don't have an answer, but I think, and I completely understand that it's kind of a flex, it's a weird thing, because the numbers are so tight, really. So maybe just for our thinking caps, we need to have kind of a plan in place down the road, so that when we get there, we're not like, what are we gonna do? I just think that we need to be thoughtful about it.
Questions or comments? I'm interested that your kindergarten projection is, seems to be holding at a pretty good, I mean, I think higher than we anticipated or planning decisions predicted. Am I right?
Yeah.
Or
Planning decisions was off last year on the low side.
they were low.
Yep.
Yeah.
It ended up, it was projected at 42, we ended up with 48.
Yeah.
The latest planning decisions information I saw was 32 for next year, but if they're off by 6 again, or 5, or whatever, that's where the balancing act comes in, so. And we haven't had as much of an early response as we'd hoped for, like Kyle was saying. It's like, we're still not feeling like we have a
Feels
really
like
good
winter
handle.
still.
Yeah,
That's what it
That's what
is.
it is, yeah. Chalk it up.
to everybody.
I don't know, it might impact it, but.
Who
Okay,
knows?
so
Yeah.
we'll hope that can, to that
I
trend.
mean, the plan is to keep 3
Hope planning
teachers
decisions
at,
continues to be wrong, right?
right. But even if it was, I mean, 32, if it came in at 30 or 32, it's really hard to say you need 3 teachers. But if you're at 38, it's really hard to say you only need 2. I mean,
Right.
these are kindergarten kids.
Right.
So, you know, it's a very fine margin
Yeah.
there, it really is.
And then just one other comment I wanted to make. I think, you know, we can all be creative for a year, but for an art program to run on $500 year after year, it's not happening. So I'm sure that there's supplies that she will take advantage of, and I know she's great about utilizing recycled things and asking people to donate stuff, toilet rolls and stuff. I kid you not. But that is not sustainable over,
No,
so
it's not.
I recognize that. I hope to see that next year go back up and not down, or remain at that level. Anyone else? Okey dokey.
And you don't even,
Jump
you don't
into
get to
Jordan
move. You don't
Small.
even get to leave.
No. Stuck with me for another round, all right.
Right to Jordan Small.
I'm just gonna grab my water.
Yep.
It's taboo to say it.
No, I know. Maybe we need paper.
I don't like that.
I looked at that in the past, yeah.
Oh,
Good to go?
Oh, sorry, yes.
No, I'm just,
Side conversation.
want to start.
Go for it.
I am Randy. I'm not going to read you the belief statement, but I decided to paste the whole thing into this document because I'm pretty happy about it.
This is something you guys just created.
We started working on this last spring, and got a little bogged down and caught in the weeds. And even with a small staff, you know, if you put more than 3 teachers in a room, you're going to have to debate philosophy for a while. So this grew out of a need to get some clarity around all the things we were learning and reading about. So we had risk training, we had multiple books that various people read. Some of the staff got to go to other trainings with a slightly different perspective, all headed towards proficiency-based. But it's trying to get more concrete with it and say, how does this really play out for students in the building? So it kind of challenged the staff to say, we're going to decide what we believe in collectively, and then we're going to hold ourselves to it. And make sure we also understand that we all have common understanding of the words we're using in the belief statement. So if any of you have ever been involved in wordsmithing something with a group, you know how much fun that can be. But that was sarcasm, sorry. One thing that we really focused on that's in this belief statement that's already a high priority is students can articulate what they should know and be able to do in order to achieve proficiency. So if I go into a classroom and I say,
What are you working on?
what are you working on right now? What are you doing right now? And they say, page 17 in the math book. I'm going to say that, yeah, but what standard are you trying to make sure you've learned? And then I know if they actually know what they're aiming for or they don't. And the staff, there's some things in here about peer observation. Some of the staff members are kind of teaming up to observe each other and test each other on these types of things. So they go in and ask those questions, which is, maybe a little more comfortable for some people than having me come in and ask those questions. But they get the same feedback either way, which is, yeah, the kids understand what the standards are. So if you go in a classroom at Jordan Small, you will quite often see the standards that they're working on in the current unit. Or you'll see a student with some kind of their own tracking device so that they know what they're personally working on. I mean, it depends on the content area. But we're really trying to make those targets, those standards really transparent and make sure the kids understand what it actually means. So that's, there's the belief statement is kind of a roadmap. It doesn't mean we've arrived yet. But these are the things we're trying to focus on. And that one in particular is something we're spending a lot of time on right now. And as that kind of goes into kind of common practice, then we'll start spending more focus on other pieces of it. So anyway, I just wanted to share that overview. As far as goals for the school, one of them was to finish the belief statement for this year, which we did, obviously. And that's all towards a more learner-centered, proficiency-based school. We've started working on trying to integrate, understand how the curriculum connects between science, math, and our applied technology class. We spent about 2 hours doing that yesterday, kind of taking stock. But going forward, it'll be much more intentional. And as the curriculums get finalized in math and science, then our applied tech program will be more highly connected to those content levels by grade level, content areas by grade level. So if you're doing a big space-related unit in 7th grade science, that's a good time to put the aerospace design project in, the STEM class, in the applied tech class. So that'll be a focus. We also did a school-wide community service project this fall. We're talking about maybe 1 or 2 grades doing something in the spring for this year, and definitely doing a fall project again next year. Attendance, as in all the schools, has been kind of a focal area to really find ways to get students who struggle with attendance, or families that struggle with attendance, to be in school more. It's hard to meet the goals if you don't have them. So the 10% per month was a figure that I decided on for Jordan Small, and that is if you're considered chronically absent if you've missed 18 days of school in a school year. That's, I don't know if it's a state average or a regional thing, but that's basically 2 days a month for us. So that's where the 10% comes from. We just look at that. We say, okay, students been out more than 2 days this month, or more than 10% this month. What's up with that? Do we know? Had the appendix out. Well, that's a good reason. And so at the beginning of the year, you're looking at every kid, but as you get to that 10% threshold every month, now we're looking at kids who have 10, or maybe we're up to 12 now. So that's a short list, but there's major issues around that. So those are the ones we're trying to focus on with the student assistance team. As far as the budget, it's basically the same tune you just heard. There's no cuts in staffing proposed. The enrollment will tick up a little bit, but staffing is going to stay the same in the grade levels. And to get to my budget targets, I had to go into supplies, text, equipment, and so forth. So there's around $8,000 reduced in those areas. Supply is about $3,500 of that, and that supply isn't just in one line. There's art supplies, PE supplies. It's a piece of all of that. Applied technology supplies, and then texts and library books reduced by about $2,500, and then there's some other smaller adjustments in various lines to come to that number. And we also did reduce stipends at Jordan Small for teacher leader and RTI and student assistance team stipends by about $8,000. And those have already gone into some of those have already gone into effect, and the other will go into effect next year. So it's kind of status quo, and hopefully we can make do with $8,000 less.
Question. Your projections for numbers, because I know we probably shouldn't harp on this, but are these what you're accurately predicting for next year? Or they're your best guess for next year?
These are current.
Those are current, okay.
So the current eighth grade class is smaller than the rest. The current incoming fifth grade class is going to be a little larger than the eighth grade class going out, so we'll probably tick up by 5, 6 students over, across the board.
That's weird, because, so current enrollment is not at 198. Again, this is confusing us, sorry. What is your current enrollment at Jason? That's why I got confused, because you were saying.
As of January, it's 190,
So it's about the same from a prediction.
and it'll probably creep up a little bit next year, based on those two factors
The
I just.
incoming fifth grade.
Right. So fifth and sixth grade next year combined is going to be around 100 kids with 4 teachers. And, I keep referring to, 2 grade spans at a time, but in response to Kate's, question, it's, that makes things more manageable for me, and it fits nicely into proficiency-based model, because we have fifth graders in sixth grade math classes right now. We have third graders in fourth grade language arts classes right now, because that's where they need to be. So if I can look at a 2-year span, it gives us a little more flexibility, and you say, 100 kids, 4 teachers, I think that's about as tight as we want to get it. It makes you a little nervous, because if 6 kids move in, who have maybe 2 of which have some needs that are a little more demanding, that's a strain. So.
Other questions? Kate?
I mean, it goes back again, oh, I'm looking at the wrong chart. Let somebody else go, I'm looking at the wrong chart, go ahead.
Okay. Somebody else?
I was just gonna say, we could work with the town and have an impact fee based on who moves in, what type of, if you've got a 6th grader, it's gonna be $5,000. If you got a kid in there, it's free,
You get a discount for
And inevitably, what happens is, we'll have a new student come enroll, and it'll be in the grade level that's already the one that's closest to the max. It happens over and over. I mean, Murphy's Law, right?
I guess, maybe a question to the board. So how do we, one of the things that I've been hearing quite a bit of it is we're cutting. So are we cutting too far? Is it gonna hurt us in the long run? How do we get the message out that, because there's, some people have misconceived ideas. I might have even been one of them. When you don't know, and when you got this much information, how do you know? And, when you say you're down to $500 for artwork, I mean, where do we draw the line? What do we ask for? How do we go forward from this point?
I think that's the discussion for next time. Definitely, I mean, it is a concern.
On Wednesday, we
Board
get to,
discussion.
we get to deliberate, so that's,
Yeah.
yep.
Well,
Something we
I'll
can,
wait till then.
so if there are,
Keep in mind,
make note of things that you're questioning or concerned about now, so that we can discuss those things on Wednesday.
We'll just get into Don's piggyback there.
What's that?
Kate found your thing there?
Did you find your thing, Kate?
Yes. No.
While Kate's looking, I would just like to say, I think you guys do a really great job at manipulating things so they work. And I know, there's classes that are big, math classes that have 27 kids in them, but they're all, that's the right level for them, and they're all functioning well there. And so I think you guys have done a great job already in that standards-based model, utilizing teams and putting kids where they belong on their continuum, so.
Thank you.
Found it.
Yes.
It's along that same line again, and this is where I think it gets tricky for us as far as the amount of staff that we require. Because, when I look at your RES, and you've got 1 to 25 in 4th grade, and then I go to 7th grade, and you've got 1 to 16, 1 to 17, and I know that's part of an anomaly, and I know that gives you flexibility, but then the conundrum is, what if the usage isn't necessary? You know what I mean? And then we've got very low ratio because maybe for a whole year we're carrying a staff member, and I mean this in the most respectful way, that maybe was not necessary. And so that's the conundrum where I think for a while, we may have to just, 1 to 17 is going to have to be it, just in case you get an influx. But it is of concern then that, do you know what I mean, that we're being really efficient. It's hard. It's hard. I just had to point it out that it's very hard. I mean, you've got a very low-level class that's got a higher ratio than a higher-level class.
But they're not, they're not in that 1 to 16. Like, right now, it shows that 1 to 15 at 7th grade, depending on what subject they're in, and I'm speaking from my own experience, my daughter is in that class, and she's in a math class that's 1 to 27. Because, for math.
It's reflected here, so I
But
can only
no,
go
but
by
he
the
can't,
year.
because they switch from subject to
Right.
subject. So in some subjects, it might be 1 to 15. But in some, so it's, I think that's the complexity when you're dealing with a small school.
And another factor in that is,
Because you've got to offer algebra and geometry and
No, I get it, I get it. It's
Right.
just when the public looks at that
Right.
ratio,
Right.
That's right.
that's what they see.
And maybe it would
It's
be
hard.
better to just
Cut the
show your
banana.
show your 5th, 6th grade numbers. And,
Get
yeah, because that's how you're programming. So
Correct.
it would make more sense probably in your model to show, these are your numbers.
Easier to explain.
Yeah.
What I often do, Kate, is I take the 9 teachers and
Divide it into the total.
the average class size for that school is 21 kids.
Yeah.
Right.
And that
Yeah.
just,
It's normal.
and then you can kind of take that and, yeah, customize it to what
I
works.
So
see
it
your
might-
point, though, when
it
you
might be-
combine them. I mean,
right.
if I'm a Wyndham resident and for whatever reason I got too much time on my hands, or I'm like really, really, really interested, and I'm poring over this, and I have a kid in 7th grade in Wyndham, and then I, do a comparative and I see, what the ratio, they'll raise the red flag. So, I don't,
It just may be more accurate to put it as you're programming it. So like 5, 6, this is my total number of students, total number of teachers ratio.
Yeah,
That kind of goes back to revamping this
yeah.
front page again.
But a little
For
more
everybody.
unique to this.
Well, I think everybody's might be a little bit
Yeah.
different.
And that's actually how we're going to have to, as we move further into standard space.
It'd be more building
It
based.
is going to be more building based because you're not,
Right.
kids are going to be moving around. And we have to get away from that one teacher, one classroom model.
Stick 'em there.
Yeah.
and in an even year, it depends how many students may be pulled out for
I'm yelling at
special ed services and how much of the day. How many students are getting gifted and talented services? I mean, and those numbers are based on student need. They're not based on some magic ratio. And that's the way it should be.
Any other questions for Randy?
I do, but I'm debating
If it's a
whether
budget question?
It is, but it's more for us than for him, so
Well, just-
let's release him to a Saturday.
Let 'em-
Okay, for Wednesday. Okay,
I'll
keep
bite
it
my
for
tongue.
Wednesday.
Make a note.
Okay.
You're going to have a lot of notes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope
Thank you.
the meet goes well.
Not gonna make it.
You're
He's
not going
not-
to make it.
But that's,
Just to know about the outcome.
Yeah, okay. You don't have to stand and get bleacher.
I don't really want to sit on the
Bum.
bleachers and.
Thank you, Randy.
Thanks, Randy.
Thanks,
All right. Thank you, Randy. And come on down, Charlie. Wyndham
You're the next
Middle
contestant.
School. Charlie Haddock. Welcome, welcome.
Good morning.
Is it still morning? Yes, it is.
Easter.
Yeah, you're looking very springy
yes, you could,
today.
if we put Sandy over next to him,
Yeah, you guys, Easter egg.
I'm gonna
If
break
I,
out into here, sing, never mind.
as I get started, if I may present to you a revised version of the staffing.
All right.
probably why.
Okay, here we go.
There you go. No,
I'm sorry.
that's okay.
Yeah. I don't think there's enough.
Take
I don't
an
think I have
initial
enough.
look of that first. There's some confusion in terms of the original form that you have and projected enrollment for next year. There was a mistake in there in the original sheet as well, so.
Ta-da.
Okay,
all right.
great, go for it.
So, as I move forward with the middle school's budget for next year and consideration of available revenues to support that budget, I wanted to make sure that programming remained as rich as it could and look for efficiencies where I could, and those efficiencies came in the form of staff. So the supply and equipment budgets that are existing in the 2013-14 budget will remain the same. So a static growth with that means that the existing students that we have in school still have the opportunity to gain the materials, to deepen the environment and continue as is. I look for efficiencies in staffing, and the efficiencies really centered on a standards-based position and the reconfiguration of a 3/5 position. The standards-based teacher's charge at the middle school has typically been an interventionist, along with a data analyst and assistant to staff in terms of testing means, in terms of the interventionist. When I looked at that position, I felt confident that I could reconfigure it. That led to really the elimination of a standards-based teacher per se. When I looked at a 3/5 position, which is in the present 8th grade, populated of about 211 students, and that 3/5 position in that larger population was needed to keep ratios within code. I looked at that 3/5 position and reconfigured it to a 2/5 position, which would be the interventionist that the standards-based teacher is now for next year. Within that cost savings of a full position and a 10th and a 5th, I also added on a stipend for a data analyst to compensate for the loss within the standards-based position. And I also eliminated 2 differentials amounting to about $1,000 within that. So that was my main focus, rather than to dig into an already bare bones equipment and supply line that is supporting instruction to a degree that I want to continue. If we take a look at the new staffing sheet that I gave you, the projected enrollment, given present figures now, with a 1% increase, would be 579. So the figures that you see under 6th, 7th, and 8th show a 1% growth of where we are at this point. Gives a blanket ratio of 23-1. It does not reflect what you were talking about in terms of Randy with homogeneous needs in mathematics or special education. It does not. So it's simply a blanket ratio there. What I'm hopeful for next year, where we're moving to an academy system, and there will be 2 academies or smaller schools within the school, where 7th and 8th grade students will be on a similar schedule, that when I look at a homogeneous group of pre-algebra students, that homogeneous group could have 7th and 8th grade students in it, which could be a vehicle to diminish the levels of higher ratios in that class specific to one grade. So ratios given, the predicted with 1% are 23. My original estimate when this budget was started to come into shape were higher than this, and my ratios were 24. Still given 9 teachers on 6th grade, 8 teachers on 7th grade, and 8 teachers on 8th grade.
You ready for questions?
I'll just,
Oh,
quick blurb on goals. Again, the goals remain the same. I came to the board recently and went over goals, but there were 4 main goals, one of which was to improve achievement by a 2% factor based on NWA, but more importantly, to look at how we would allow that achievement to happen, and look at our assessments and common assessment pieces, make sure they're valid and reliable, make sure the appropriate rigor is in place. That's all part of the work that Christine is facilitating. But it also includes some building-based work to make sure teachers are collaborating amongst each other and are trending data according to a set standard to trend data. Also looking at writing proficiencies and raising that writing level of proficiency across the board, and also looking at our structure as a school. Not looking at Wyndham Middle School as one school, but two schools within a school that allows more vertical connectiveness between teachers and then more connectedness with the needs for each child within that academy. So those goals remain the same.
Are you ready for
Ready.
questions? Just a clarification question really quickly. On number 4, where it says identify significant decreases, the third thing, that's actually an increase, isn't it?
Number 4,
On your white document?
okay.
Number 4, it says identify the significant
Oh.
decreases that you wrote about. The third thing down, creation of a differential position.
It is.
That's an increase, not a
That's a
decrease.
confusing aspect, I understand that, but I included that because it was part of the reconfiguration of the 2/5 position.
Okay.
So even though that's an addition, I wanted to include it in that component to show correlation of why it is
Right.
there. And the correlation is that it provides a service lost through
Yes.
the elimination of the standards-based teacher.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. Questions?
Do you have a social worker? This is kind of a looming,
Do I have a specific
Worker?
social worker? Not a specific social worker
so not a
that,
position.
not a position within the school.
Yes, Jerry?
And just to clarify on this sheet, and we understand this sheet is, the standards-based teacher shown here is in special ed, but it's not, it's in your budget, it's not a special ed item.
Right,
Okay,
correct.
that's, I was pretty sure of that, just wanted to clarify. Okay.
Other questions?
Oh, this is amazing.
I know. Poor Kyle.
Run, Charlie, quick. No.
Everybody got all their questions out with Kyle.
Poor Kyle.
You know, can I make a comment?
Yeah.
And I have to say, and because Randy is still here also, I'm very, very impressed with both of our middle schools, because, I mean, there's a lot of work going on there for the benefit of the student. And I know, like, over the years, we keep talking about PLPs, personal learning plans, which we really haven't gotten to yet, but I see a lot of work going on in the schools, kind of going that way without each child having an individual plan. But I commend both of you on the great work that you're doing in your schools to advance the learning of the students and getting a lot of the input from the staff and the teachers. And I think it's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
And for being cognizant of the cost.
Yes.
Anyone else?
Doing well with this.
Let's just beat this to death.
Go for it.
Go for it.
Beat it.
I'm back on this sheet. And the fact that, and I just want to make this comment for the sake of the Finance Committee and the fact for clarity, and I didn't even notice it, but the standards-based teacher being under special ed is really under your budget, correct?
It is, yes.
So I'm suggesting that, to make this very clean, that the Finance Committee consider anything related to special ed be in the special ed budget. And anything that is theirs be in theirs. Because really, that support in special ed is addressed by Phil and the needs. And if he could then present his budget
And maybe show by school.
by school, that would be very helpful.
Or at
and
least have a document like this.
we don't have to deal with
Sorry.
this.
What belongs
John's
where?
not like that.
He doesn't like it?
More work.
Finance committee needs to really look at this form.
Well, they can look at it, but the board gets input.
I understand.
Okay.
But what I want to make sure is you get accurate information, and when you transfer from electronic data to manual data, there's just, I know why that's there, I'm not publicly state why that is there right now, but there was a reason why that was placed in that particular.
No, I understand, I'm just trying, I think when we have cost centers, he can only speak to what is in his budget.
Of course, but the board requested it this way some time ago.
I'm talking about future,
Yeah.
Mr. Davis.
Mr. What do you want? Mr.
Well, we hear, it, and we
Yeah.
understand.
It needs to be looked at. All right. Mr. Haddock, Principal
Thank you.
Haddock, thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Still convinces.
Enjoy the nice day.
Everybody else has.
Enjoy the weather.
Listen here, mister.
Mister. Mister.
Oh, well.
She'll go to some bottle of vodka or something.
I don't like
It's all
that.
over. She's going to town.
A quick call to Bill
can
and
share
tell
us
him they'll be
anything
done in
you like.
probably half an hour.
Yeah, I know what's going on.
Hey, you, mister.
All right, it looks like we're just getting a little snack, so just a little snack time. One moment. You can leave us on air, it's fine. We're on air, so. Well, we're trending pretty well. There's been less and less questions each person, so you might get off lightly. Either that or we'll be, you know, swing back.
We
to
saved
our-
it all for you.
We'll wake up.
All depends if it's raining or nice out.
Wait a minute, we're 10 minutes ahead of schedule. We gotta take a long time on this one.
I guarantee anything I can't answer, I will come back with.
I know I got a lot of tabs.
Thank you for being here on this beautiful, sunny, spring-like day.
It's absolutely beautiful out.
Yeah.
Yes, and if for some reason my phone goes off, the 3 boys are home alone, and
Oh, geez.
drums were going, electric guitars, and who knows, so.
Maybe the neighbors that called.
That's right. It's a good thing we don't have neighbors. I'm going to go ahead and start on the first enrollment sheet and also the personnel staffing sheet. I'm assuming that's where everyone has begun. And I also just want to point out enrollment differences between last year to this year, where it's listed here as 1087 last year and 1031. In last year's enrollment numbers, that number also included the students that we send to the real school. And so in actuality of the 1087, roughly 22, 23 of those students would have been at real, and so our actual numbers projected for this year would have been around 1055. And if you look at the enrollment projected for next year and the numbers we've been at this year, we've been right around 1,020. We did have some students who enrolled or changed placements in other schools. And just so that you know, a majority of those students are students who had moved in from other towns that actually had not started Wyndham High School with us, and after a year had actually then gone back to their original placement due to family situations or to other things. So the numbers that you see there for our projected enrollment, looking at around 1030, and that does not include the real school students that we do send there, which is a combination of sophomores, juniors, and seniors who attend that school.
Just a quick question. Is that just the real school? Because I know there's other schools that we send students to. Is it just the real school students?
That's in this other number.
That's in this other number?
And the other number that was here is was just real school for last year.
Okay, thank you.
We did have 2 students this past year who did take advantage of the charter option. And that's another reason for the drop. Looking down through, as far as, and I'll just highlight any sort of changes, you'll see a change in special education teacher and a change in special education specialist. That's directly due to, as I think Mr. Davis said earlier, the movement of special education students and their needs across the district. And so as programming needs change, I know as part of Phil's job is to actually move services with students. And so that's anticipated changes that go along with that. Also looking down and through, you'll notice a change from 0.6 to 0.8 in family and consumer science. That initially, when the numbers had been done last year, was a change in programming at Wyndham High School. We currently share that position with Jordan Small as far as that person actually providing health education services up there. And I think looking at enrollment and need, we're moving that position back and forth, trying to cover classes. And so it's a matter of whose budget that it is in. It had been 0.6 mine and 0.4 Randy's. Now it would be going 0.8 mine and 0.2 into Randy's budget. And so again, it's movement based on need. Looking at the student services, which is the guidance, last year we had come to you during the budget process after this particular form had been inked, and we had 2 retirements out of student services. We had 3 and 4/5, and based upon the size of the school and recommended counselor loads, you approved taking that position to full-time. And so that was actually in last year's budget when the form was presented, it was 3.8. You increased that to a full-time position. And so we have 4 full-time counselors. And then looking down and through music and chorus, that's actually just movement of partial of a position for orchestra, which it entirely had been in Charlie's budget, to a portion of it mine as an accounting item. And I believe that those are the major changes that are taking place for personnel. So is there any questions about the personnel portion?
I have just one.
Yeah.
I'm just, I'm curious why the videographer is in his, because she's in Christine, he is in Christine's also.
It needs to be changed. Thank you.
Where does he really belong? In Christine's?
Christine.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you, Claire.
We're not trying to decrease your staff.
I think the original reason he was put here is because he's in my building.
Yeah.
We give him a
He was.
home.
Are you going to evict him now? No. Kidding.
Charging him rent.
Is he in the hall like Nicole? Kidding.
No, but actually, if we kick him out to central office, Nicole could use that space,
There you
so.
go.
Good thinking.
That's right. She wanted a center, didn't she?
All right.
I won't tell Gary. I'm going to go to the actual budget request form and talk about our goals and student outcomes, things that we've been working on this year. Number one, and as we move towards the incoming freshman class through statute having to graduate or being required to graduate with a proficiency-based diploma, we've been working this year to identify and communicate the graduation standards and the performance indicators for each of those graduation standards across all 8 content areas. And to date, we have fleshed out graduation standards in all 8 content areas and performance indicators in 7 of the 8. And we're finalizing those in number 8. And so for each graduation standard, and we have anywhere between 5 and 12 for each content area, each one of those then have a sub anywhere from 5 to 12 standards underneath. So several hundred standards that are then divided into performance indicators across the multiple classes that we offer. Second step we've been working on is that since we have those performance indicators, graduation standards is actually mapping where they fall within the curriculum and then looking within the units of study that we offer in each of the courses. And the program that we use is called Atlas, and I'm not sure if Christine has had an opportunity to talk about Atlas, but to date we have mapped about 400 different units within Atlas so that we can look at for any student who comes through the curriculum at Windham High School to make sure that they have opportunity to learn and access to each of those graduation standards and performance indicators. Third one here, develop and pilot a reporting system for transcripts and graduation standards. That's something that's definitely in progress. We have a few programs that we're looking at. And if you remember, I think I was here in November. We talked about the idea of moving forward with a two-page transcript, which I know is a large question by the community. What would proficiency base look like? Which would be a standard transcript, which is what most folks are familiar with, and then accompanying that also a standards-based transcript that lists all of the standards, graduation standards that a student has met, as well as how they've done within the guiding principles throughout their time in high school. And what's actually kind of fun is we have an opportunity Monday as a leadership team to present the work that we've done at a conference at USM to share with other schools the progress that we've made. So I don't know if you've had an opportunity to hear about the work we've done with Great Schools Partnership this year with having a schools coach, but hopefully before the end of the year we get a chance to share. Tremendous work, really has helped to vault us forward, and amazing things have happened. I'm quite proud of the work that we've done. We've been working on this year implementation of standards-based teaching strategies, looking at additional opportunities for students to meet graduation standards through alternative means, anything from online to revamping our alternative program that we offer at Windham High School. all based upon the standards or graduation standards performance indicators that we've developed and identified. And so it's no longer the conversation about whether or not you passed English 9, it's what parts of English 9 didn't you pass, and the number of kids who have to repeat a course at Wyndham High School, which is having an impact on everything from graduation rates to attendance to student success within the building. Last year, and we had shared with you as a board and new board members, if any time you'd like to sit down and talk about this, we had done a complete external and internal review of our student services department, and there were some goals that we set out of that. Number one goal was communication across the building and to parents. We're still continuing to work on the goals and action plans of that, and some of the work forward. And then the last goal that we've been working on this year, and it's really falling within our proficiency-based diploma and how we're measuring guiding principles, is how do we develop almost an academy structure where we can work with students and their strengths to help them not only meet their community service requirement, but look at a final project requirement. And if anything, looking to help students become more competitive as they leave Wyndham High School to whatever their next destination is. Any questions on our goals for this year and some of the work that we've done?
So that's the capstone piece there.
That's the capstone.
Do you have a kind of a new timeline for that?
The first group that is going to graduate with the proficiency-based diploma, we would like to actually have the capstone be part of the way that they demonstrate the guiding principles, which are clear and effective communicator, quality problem solver. We want to have that be the component of how they have an opportunity to meet those. And so that would then be incoming freshman class. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions about goals? So moving into next year, curriculum, because for me it always comes back to opportunity to learn, and it shouldn't matter who you are dealt with a teacher, who the actual particular class it in. You should have equal opportunity, equal experiences, and the level of rigor should be the same regardless. And so we are working on everything from common assessments to common curriculum. And yesterday when we had our staff development day, which was absolutely outstanding, was a great opportunity to, across different courses, be able to settle on what is that level of rigor, what is it that we should be teaching, and what are those experiences that all students should be able to have and learn and talk about. In addition to that, we got to report out on all this stuff. And we're looking at ways that we can attach every single formative and summative assessment. And forgive me for the edu-speak, which is summative would think about those high-stakes projects, tests, anything that you almost get that final grade on. Formative assessments are things that you use to inform along the way, so homework assignments, quizzes, things that teachers use to say you're getting it, you're not getting it. How do we track all that, and then how do we have that inform those larger graduation standards? Because we've got to make a high-stakes decision at some point. Have you completed all the courses that you need to, and also have you met all the standards so that you can then, in fact, earn a Wyndham High School diploma? So we've got a tremendous amount of work to do with that. And then again, I'll always go back to alternative pathways. And that's one thing that is, I think, beneficial to students through anything that's proficiency-based or standards-based, is that if you have an opportunity to spend a spring at sea in an educational program, you can meet many of the same standards that you can meet in a biology class. And so what are the opportunities that are available out there for students so that they can continue not only to build a personal resume, to be able to seek personal interests, but also that they can have rigor in a relevant situation for them. And so what are those opportunities, and how can we provide them for students? So that's quite a bit of work, but I am proud to say that Wyndham High School is being recognized by our peers as a group that's kind of out ahead in some of this. So very, very proud of that.
I would love to have a workshop on the grade school partnership and the work that you're doing. So if you could make note of that. I'm interested. I don't know if anybody else is, but it sounds like great work.
Do you want to talk money?
Yes, that's what we're here for. You've impressed us no end. Now give us the
Down and dirty.
Bottom line.
Under the
Let's
bottom
talk about the
line.
significant increases and any sort of decreases. One significant increase of $111,622 is our vocational assessment. And we currently belong to two vocational programs. One is the Portland Arts and Technology Center. The other one is the Westbrook Vocational Center. What it means as a benefit to our students is that if there's a program that's not available at our primary sending place, which is Westbrook, students then have the opportunity to go over to Portland to take a course. And we take and send a couple buses every day to both locations. But programs such as welding, music and industry, and even some of the auto repair programs that kids do not have as an available program at Westbrook, we can send them over to Portland. This number is always based upon the previous 2 years' enrollments. And previous 2 years, we've actually sent more students there. This year, our numbers went down, but our numbers went down in this year, not the previous 2 years. So we may see a little bit of a decrease. However, it's not something that I'd like to see us banking on as a decrease, because we continually need to send students to those programs because the skills and the things that they learn about and honestly have the opportunity to earn a nationally recognized certificate is a great opportunity. And we do not have enough students who take advantage. And I think the night that we had an opportunity here with our Jobs for Maine graduates presentation was one thing that we echoed. We need to have more students who are taking advantage of those programs. But that number is up for this year. Under decreases, one is the equivalent of a 3/5 teacher, and even since this particular document was completed, we've actually taken this to a 4/5 reduction at Windham High School. And the reductions that right now that we are targeting, one is 2/5 out of the math department, and that is a reduction to for somebody asking for a voluntary reduction in their workload. Going from full-time to 3/5, and we've run the numbers, and by moving some courses around, at this point, given current enrollments and current scheduling, we will be able to honor that request. And in addition, we also have had a request from somebody to go from full-time to 3/5 in the English department. And we're currently working through that process to make that happen. And what it will result in is our literacy coach, who over the years, if you remember through budget, we've been slowly moving that individual from being a literacy coach to being an English teacher. The last 5th that was remaining will be moving over as being an English teacher. But what it does for us is it allows us to hit our target without any reduction in force at Windham High School. And we are right now currently in the process of our master schedule. Students have already put in their course request. We've gone through and have already determined number of sections. Right now, next week, we start building the master schedule. With what we have for personnel is what we need in order to be able to cover the courses. And what's been actually kind of fun this morning, listening to the other two presentations, people forget that high schools are multi-age classrooms. We talk about multi-age, but if you're ready for geometry, it doesn't matter if you're a freshman, sophomore, junior, or senior. That's your next course. And so it's difficult to look through. You have X number of freshmen, X number of sophomores. We'll have students who may come into as many as 9 different math classes their freshman year, based upon level, ability, and readiness. So it's just a little bit of a change when it looks to scheduling. And so we actually look more towards how we're meeting through department needs. The second reduction that's listed there is a $24,000, and $19,000 of that has come out of textbooks, and the remaining $5,000 has come out of supplies for Windham High School. What it will result in is it will result in holding off on some purchases of some books that actually need to be retired, but we're going to go another year the way that we are. I will also tell you, as board members who've been here for a while, we've made some significant increases over the years to the number of students who are taking our advanced placement courses. Looking forward, that is one piece that is actually a little bit of a challenge for us when it comes to budgeting, just because the advanced placement program, much like many colleges, additions change very, very quickly. And the additions are oftentimes dictated to us. And so where you may be able to get 7 or 8 years out of a science book, in the case of an AP book, you may only get 2. And so we try to purchase those used where we can, but many of those books are running $250 to $275 a piece for running those courses. It's a great problem to have, but it does present a little bit of a challenge when it comes to purchasing. And so, we will purchase what we need to purchase. And as I always tell staff, if we have to sell body parts or something else in order to be able to get it, we'll figure out a way. The last item here, which is and if you want to take on your paper and actually draw a line under the 24,000, this is something I just wanted to bring to your attention, which is the Restorative Learning Program is a grant-funded program, and for those of you who've been through an expulsion hearing, you'll often hear that the Restorative Learning Program is something what we will require a student to attend during the time that they're out of school. That is a grant-funded program, and the grant is gone this year. We are in the process right now, and there's rumor that an additional 21st century set of grants will be released, and so we will be applying for that. But I just wanted to bring it to your attention. Obviously, we had our budget cuts, but in addition to that, it's a cut that's outside of our budget because it's a grant-funded position. And so at this point, we will look for alternative ways, either through grant funding or through other supports in order to be able to try to fill that position. But it's an important piece for those students who have any sort of an educational disruption, not only at Wyndham High School, but Jordan Small Middle School and also Wyndham Middle School. So those are my decreases that are listed within my budget.
Marge?
Staying on the RLP, if there is not a grant to get, and what happens to these students if the program goes away and you cannot find a grant program somewhere? Is there a plan somewhere? Is there an option?
When do you find out?
He's blank.
When do you find out whether you get the grant?
The requests for proposals, the RFPs haven't even gone out yet.
Oh, okay.
Right now, it's rumored. In the past, we have shared this grant with Westbrook. It would be my desire moving forward that we would apply for one just as Wyndham Raymond Schools. But their RFPs haven't been released yet for this particular thing. Marge, I guess to answer to your question, right now, I currently do not have the funding in order to be able to support it. So any student who would be currently expelled who would be accessing that program, we would have to, I don't know what we would do for educational services for them.
Aren't we obliged to give them opportunities?
I think just
We're not.
special ed kids.
We've been very supportive
Generous.
to provide tutorial services when kids are expelled. This is an area that's going to have a huge impact, because it's just not kids who are expelled either.
Correct.
I mean, there are kids, before you put them into real school, that you try to do
Right.
anything possible to keep them at Wyndham High School, and sometimes RLP is an opportunity to turn them around before they look at alternative settings. So this is going to have an impact.
And also, if I can just add to that, Sandy, it's also kids who may be having some school anxiety issues as well. It's been actually great to be able to have the resource to be able to put students into a half-day program, still stay connected with their teachers. But it's an item, it's not in the regular budget, it does not have an impact on the regular budget, but I thought
So
that...
this 30,000 is all grant money right now?
Correct. And that pays for 1.5 personnel in there, plus our transportation costs for picking up students.
So this is the whole cost, 30,000?
That's the whole cost.
I know we're not just deliberating, but I'm concerned about
Yeah, I
that.
know.
Yeah, I'm just,
Eric and then Jerry.
Okay. How many kids approximately do you think were helped through the program?
Through,
Yeah, just guess. I mean, you don't have to be exact.
I would say 40 to 50 students cycle through there a year.
So it's important.
Yeah.
And that seems like about the same dollar amount we were just talking about the other night on a questionable issue. So anyways,
Yeah, we'll discuss on Wednesday.
Yes.
Go ahead, Jerry.
I would just suggest that you, if you could, just put a little blurb together about real costs for this, because 30 sounds like it's a little low. It's a great program, so to deliberate would be easier if I had a piece
Yeah.
of paper that sort of showed the real
Number of
costs.
students
That would be the
serviced.
If we
costs.
picked it up.
If we
Yeah.
picked it up. So sort of what would that look like if we were to decide to do that?
Okay. What I can
That
give
would be
you is
helpful.
complete number of students serviced to date.
Okay. And just what the
And-
What was
cost
the
of
cost?
running the program is, just, then we'd have, okay, that'd be great. I have another question, though, and that is text. Have you looked at with AP whether you can rent text?
I was just gonna say that, because that's.
Because Molly's
They do
been,
in
we've been
college.
renting texts for her for like
That is the
various
new thing,
things.
right?
And I don't know if there's a cost savings to that or whatever, but I would just, there's all these
One thing.
college texts. I don't know if they have them for AP.
Well, AP are the college texts,
Okay.
and that's something actually that I'm very interested in. Actually, it's something I'm very interested in depending upon where we go forward with technology. Because one thing that I've looked at is that, even buying digital copies, with
e-text.
the digital copies of the e-texts, one thing I have found out is that those then become, the school buys them for the student, because they then become the property of the student, but even the long-term cost when you're purchasing an e-text per year that then goes with the kid is actually less money than what we're paying now currently for texts. So it's definitely an area of interest.
If I can find one of the old emails from when we did this, because I lost all my emails, I'll pass on
Yes.
to the text rental company that we've used. It was great.
Yeah,
It was
my son's
terrific.
used it too. It's
Yeah.
a big savings.
Big savings. For a text you don't need to actually
Right.
continue to have, because year by year you have different numbers of people in these classes, so. Okay, I think that's probably all I had. Kate?
I'm back to this 30,000, and I was part of, just as a historical, part of the 21st Grant Committee back in the day when it was a 5-year gig with Westbrook, which was a lot of money, a lot of grant money, and a lot of support. And I am extremely concerned about this 30,000 not being in your budget, and for all the reasons I understand. And I guess my question number one is to you, Don. How much of the board contingency did we actually tap last year?
Last year, we didn't have any.
Okay.
This year, we have.
Okay, so I'll be exploring ways that that can be funded. Thank you.
Don, I think this is a question for you. When these teachers go from being full-time down to 3/5 or so, obviously there's a drop in salary, but do they keep full
They do.
benefits?
It's a good question, and they do down to 3/5. Below that, then they start to be prorated.
Prorated. It's prorated.
It is per, okay, that's what I wanted to ensure, so,
They don't get the full gig.
all right.
Okay.
Katrina had to leave.
fine.
On, this is an odd question, but on page 49 or 52 in the pink ones, and this is graduation, I'm just curious because we have $11,000 every year, kind of like runs out. Did we have extra money that we paid for, did last year, was it less or more? Because I know last year was the only year we did graduation in the field.
What
and,
page are you on?
49 or 52 in the pink, and 11,000 for graduation every year. And in that, I think, is the cost of the,
Last year's graduation was actually significantly more expensive than where we've held it at the Civic Center.
so did we have, I guess my question is, did we have some, I know this is this is an overall figure that covers, so does your balance, if there's any, if you spend less, go into, does it sit there? Okay, and you can just, when it goes over, you just draw from that?
No, that isn't how it goes. To the extent you don't spend it, it goes on designated fund balance.
Right.
If he needs more money, he usually has to look within his internal budget or talk
Okay.
to Sandy about where the money might come from.
And that's what happened last year?
Last year's graduation came from other lines.
Okay. And this number pretty much covers you for Civic Center, which is where we are every other year. Okay. Anyone else? Somebody?
And just so that everyone's aware, that's not just the Civic Center costs, it's also
know.
the costs of diplomas, it's a cost of awards, it's a cost of some flowers for the event, though the class picks up most of that. Class also picks up their caps and gowns. But most of it is really awards and rental space.
Anyone else?
When is graduation?
Graduation is June 8th out of the newly refurbished Cumberland County Civic Center. And we are expecting, as in last year, about 3,500 people to attend. And all of you are welcome to sit right up on stage and be part of that. We will have a seat for you there ready to go. It is one of the best, or to be able to give a diploma.
Me too.
That's right.
Is there any other question? See, the later you go in the program, the better off you are.
Nobody calls, it means the house is safe.
That is
As far as
great.
you know.
Thank you. Yeah, I know. Somebody disconnected the phone.
I'm sure they're spackling as we speak.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chris.
And, go ahead.
I just have, not pertinent to you, just an overall that I meant to ask Kyle, and maybe he can't even answer it, maybe it's more appropriate for you, Don, or for Mike Kelly, but I know last year we appropriated $10,000 in the hopes of students going up to Raymond for a special bus, and I think we had 5 students at the time, as I recall, doing that, which, you know, is substantial per student to accommodate that. I'm interested in an update on that, how many students we're still doing that for, have any dropped out, and what are the plans going forward?
Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay. Just so everyone's aware, our meeting next week, Katrina is going to be sending, I know the agenda came out, Katrina will be sending notes out, some more information about some of the stuff that you've seen on the agenda. Is there any, I'd open it to public comment, but we have no public.
I do,
Go ahead.
as we go into deliberations, I'm going to be asking the Finance Committee their thoughts. I haven't seen any minutes from the one prior to when we were presented the budget, but I'm interested in their thoughts.
I
regarding
sent
this.
minutes
The
from
last
March
one.
7th.
I
You didn't get
see-
them?
No.
Okay, let's double check that.
Okay.
You couldn't open them?
No.
Okay, but I did send them
Okay.
Yes.
a couple weeks ago. Yeah,
Then that would be great.
okay, that's great.
And maybe that will answer my questions, but
Maybe.
We- If not, you can ask them.
if not, then I will ask at the meeting. That's
Okay.
great, thanks.
So do we have public comment next week? I'm trying to figure out what happens.
I don't think,
I thought
It's
next
something
week,
about-
I thought next week was public comment, and then the week after
I
is
can't
deliberation.
remember.
I think
But there's, on the
Public
agenda,
And
it's-
deliberation after the public comment. I think there's a
Yes.
half an hour for public comment.
Okay.
I don't
And then
have, I
we
didn't print mine out yet. Do you have,
deliberate, okay.
do you have yours, Sandy?
I have it, it just says public forum, I'm sorry.
It doesn't say deliberation for next week, that's why I was
But you,
confused.
I mean, you do what you want.
Well,
I think it deliberations the week after,
You
wasn't it?
could do either, you could do both.
Right.
I think there's a way to condense.
But there's another agenda.
I mean, I'm wondering if you take public, I'll work with the board chair, vice chair, but, you know, we might be able to cancel one of these meetings. I'm thinking April 9th, you might not need. 'Cause that
well,
night
it
you're
depends
supposed to do-
on how tough it is, how tough a go it is.
But
Yeah,
I think it's time to get public input next week.
Right.
You could deliberate that night as well.
Did I not see that we were having a half an hour of public comment, and then after that, we were going into deliberations? Because otherwise, it seems like we could kill 2 birds with 1 stone while we're sitting
Exactly.
here.
It depends on the year. We were talking about this earlier.
Yeah.
One year, we had so much public input controversy that it was not doable to
Right.
take that night and also deliberate. So that's when we separated it out.
Right.
I think next week you could take public input and deliberate and
I
Well,
mean, I'm agreeable to doing that. I don't know how much public comment we're going to have.
Right.
If we're only going to have, and I don't want to eliminate public comment by any means, but if it's only going to be a few people to comment, and we're sitting here, let's go at it.
yeah.
Right, I agree. And originally, when that was put together, we hadn't had any meetings, and we weren't sure of
Right.
how much public comment we would have at the ends of the presentations, which we've seen has been zero,
So
actually.
we have public forum at 6:30 next week. Then we have at 7 o'clock a special meeting,
See, that's where I saw that.
an executive session, and then, yes.
Yes.
So we have a
Okay,
half hour,
okay,
right.
okay.
Then we have
So
a
we-
regular meeting. We don't, and we have we don't have deliberating next week, but we
So how
probably.
much is
But we
on
could move it
the-
in.
It's called go to 7:50. That depends on, we've got some agendas to approve next week.
We can put it
and-
in, we can put it in. We can put it
Even
in,
if it's a preliminary.
Yeah, I think it's a good
throwing out,
idea.
this
We
is
can
my
add-
Big concern.
right, we can add
I think
the
that'd be helpful.
For me, it would be,
the discussion of the board, because it's really close to when we just got through with this, so there's not a long
Even if
period
it's
of
only an
time.
hour, so that we have a chance to
Right,
kind of throw out what we're thinking.
because even though the agenda looks long, it's really minutes, minutes,
Right,
minutes,
right, right.
minutes.
It's minutes.
It's a lot of minutes, and whatever Pete was,
So, public gets a chance to input next week, first thing.
Yes.
When's there, I mean, obviously, every meeting we have, they have the opportunity, but like, this is kind of a special designated time for them to do it at the start. When's their next chance to do that? Because, I mean, so far, they've heard these presentations, but they haven't heard our deliberations and our recommendations. So are they having another opportunity once we start really throwing out what we might be looking at cutting and things like that?
I know we have it at the public, at the auditorium. Do we have one in between? I don't have the breakdown.
But you could certainly do it after your deliberations each time, whether you stay with the 2nd, the 9th, or the 16th or not. You could have comments after, because they
Right. And it's closer to when we're doing it, so rather than people saying, oh, like Eric has to do, make all these notes that, you know, when there's a meeting, I have to ask this. So there's no reason we can't add public comment,
Each time.
none at all.
And do we have a meeting school vacation week?
I don't believe so.
No.
What week is school vacation?
It's the later, like the 20th, 23rd, or...
It's the week of the 18th?
Friday. Well, Friday's off, and then it's that next week.
Oh, the next week, okay.
All right.
So we don't have a meeting that week, okay.
Dawn, you had something?
Yeah, thank you very much. I just want to make sure that, for your benefit, that to the extent you have any questions, the earlier I can get them to get to you so that you have what you need for research done before the meeting, so that I'm not saying, gee, I'll help you tomorrow. I'd rather help you so you can deliver.
Thank you for your responses.
Yeah,
because
very,
they've been
very
timely.
quick, they've been very rapid, thank you.
That's because you don't go home, right?
There's a cot in the office.
We get that. Does anybody?
put that in the budget.
Does anybody have anything else? No comments, whatever? Okay, then. We're adjourned. Thank you.
Fold down, one of those fold down, what are they?